Welcome everybody to our town council for May 14th, 2024. This is the call to order, and Kelly, roll call, please.
Thank you. Councilmember Henderson?
Here.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie?
Here.
Mayor Pallavi?
Here.
Councilmember Klostad?
Here.
And Councilmember Romack?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. And if everybody would rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Great, thank you. We are going to move on to our public comment opportunity. Just a reminder, this is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on items that are not on tonight's agenda. And you have 3 minutes. Please state your name for the record. And if there's any handouts or something to pass out, we would ask that you pass that off to the staff table and not approach the dais and give us each a packet. Staff will be able to handle that for us if there are any handouts from anybody who wants to make public comment. So with that, please step on up. Public comment is open. Seeing, thank you. And don't forget to state your name, and you want the microphone to be green on the light, and the timer is to my left and your right.
So
there you go.
Okay.
Now you're on.
All right, now I'm
go
on.
ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Good afternoon, Town Council. Good afternoon, Mayor. My name is Sandy, and I am here today as one of We the People. We thank you for agreeing to be servants of the people. We thank you for having taken your oaths of office to uphold and defend the constitutions. We come in peace. We come in peace to give you notice and instruction so that you and your agents may provide due care. The national lockdown notice has already been given to 50 state governors, to the President of the United States, to the Supreme Court, to the United States Senate, and the United States Congress. We are now giving you a copy. In January, we learned that the federal government, in alignment with the World Health Organization, has announced an amendment to a credible threat of a public health emergency. Their expanding countermeasures now include both Ebola and Marburg viruses, and extensions of liability immunity to manufacturers, distributors, program planners, qualified persons, and their officials, agents, and employees. We have included this report in our notice envelope given to you. We have also learned that the government was never granted any authority to lock down the people. Even in times of emergency, the main object of government is the protection and preservation of personal rights, private property, and public liberties. The government just serves for our benefit as public officers, trustees, and servants of the people. We are also attaching a list of unalienable rights, which includes the right to accept or refuse any medical treatment for any reason. Since this council has a history of putting the city under health emergency orders, or should I say the town, for extended periods of time, we are very concerned that another round of involuntary lockdowns and health orders could occur in this fair town. My colleague will continue.
Thank you. And was your first name Sandy?
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome.
My name is Deborah.
Thank you, Deborah.
Grinder. Thank you for letting us have this opportunity to speak to you. Good evening, council members and mayor. Please take notice that in all states in our Republican form of government have sworn to protect individual liberty as a condition to be hired as trustees. The people of America are all guaranteed the same rights in all states. As an elected official, do you believe it is your duty to always protect the natural rights of the people so they are guaranteed enjoyment of all their natural rights? Or do you believe that in some time of panic or emergency, that you can remove the people's rights to freely exercise liberty, movement, worship, commerce, or any other purpose that is lawful? If so, please show constitutional authority where you get that power, posting this granted authority conspicuously within the next 15 days, notifying the public and all agents. If you cannot show where you got the authority and you take any action blocking the people's rights to enjoy freedom, then any lockdown, mandate, or forced use of a medical device will be construed as being done with malice, intent, full knowledge, and understanding against your trust indenture, your contract with the people, the Constitution. This notice is given in peace and with the love of Christ, that you and your agents may provide due care to those who have all political power, the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Any other public comment this evening? Seeing none, I will close. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Yeah. And if anybody else has public comment, you're welcome to make your
Good
way
evening,
towards the podium.
council members and mayor. My name's Shelley. I live at Truckee Artist Lofts, and we have an ongoing problem there. We don't have enough spots in the parking lot across from our building to park our vehicles, so we have to park on Donner Pass and Roundhouse. A lot of our residents, I'm here representing Tahoe, which is Truckee Artist Lofts. A lot of our residents are disabled and they're unable to walk long distances. Me, I am lucky enough to have a spot in our lot, but there's only 18 spots. There's 77 apartments, and some people have more than one vehicle. I mean, that's over 144 vehicles. They're not gonna fit in that lot. And I've also pointed out to Julie, the ticket lady, I don't know officially what she's called, but I pointed to her, there are 3 cars that have been parked there. They're causing vandalism to our cars. 2 of them have had 4 flat tires. One of them, the whole front of the vehicle has been smashed in, and the guy is still parked in that lot. So I would ask the chief for extra patrols. We need better security around there. We need more patrols, and we need better lighting, because lights on the edge of the street are not adequate enough to light the back of the lot, and that's where they hide. Today, I found a crack pipe about 10 feet away from one of the cars that's illegally parked there with no resident permit or anything. And I called the cops, and Officer, I think it's Morris, came and got it, but it's happening more frequently. These people have been parked there for months and months and months, and there's no overnight parking. So I would ask the council and the chief for extra patrols, please, because I shouldn't find crackpots, pipes, sorry, I'm nervous. I shouldn't find crack pipes right on the sidewalk where children play. That is terrifying to me. I know it happens all over America, but in the last week, I found 3. 2 in our parking lot that's designated to our residents only, and 1 on the sidewalk right across the street. That terrifies me. So I would ask for extra patrols, please. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that feedback, Shelley. We appreciate you being here and bringing that to our attention. Any other public comment this evening? Seeing none, thank you. Just quick summary, we don't take action on any of the public comment. It has all been noted, and we will follow up with appropriate staff if appropriate after the fact. So thank you. With that, Erica Mertens, if you will join me at the podium for our first proclamation of Asian American Pacific Islander Month. No. Yes. Awesome. So, whereas the town of Truckee is proud to join in the national celebration of Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, observed annually during the month of May, we welcome the opportunity to celebrate their rich culture and heritage and develop a deeper understanding and appreciation of the role they have played in our nation's history and continue to have in today's society, including the significant milestone of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in May of 1869. And whereas the Chinese railroad workers made up to 90% of the Central Pacific Railroad workforce, risked life and limb in some of the most difficult terrain and weather in order to complete the project, and their accomplishments were a key contribution to the rapid economic development of the American West and the entire American economy. And by the completion of the railroad, at least 45% of Truckee's workforce was Chinese, making it home to the second largest Chinatown on the west coast of the United States. These residents were an essential part of Truckee's early community, providing labor not only for the railroad, but also to power the timber and ice harvesting industries and to operate several businesses, including an opera theater, restaurants, barber shops, tea houses, grocery stores, boarding houses, fraternal associations, and herbal stores. And whereas the town of Truckee honors and thanks the Chinese railroad workers and their families who have helped to shape our local community into the township it is today, acknowledging the significance of their contributions into our history, giving them a voice to articulate their experience of that time, and recognizing the mistreatment and injustices that occurred. And whereas the town of Truckee acknowledges the groundbreaking work of scholar Gordon H. Chang, whose unprecedented research has helped to recover the Chinese railroad workers' stories and celebrate their role in making American history. And the town of Truckee is dedicated to inclusiveness and wants to encourage our community to learn about our history and hopes to continue to build bridges of understanding and respect within our diverse society. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that May 2024 is Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders Months and encourages citizens to learn about our history and practice inclusivity. And Erica is going to accept this proclamation on behalf of Gordon Chang. So, Erica, here you are. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, I am just here in place of Dr. Gordon Chang, who is a professor at Stanford University and has done extensive research, as you mentioned. And I'll just read his remarks, which is that those who lived, toiled, and sacrificed in the past should be honored by the living today. We are the inheritors of their lives and should never neglect history. What we do today will hopefully guide those in the future and serve as their model. Thank you. And I just wanted to also make note that he has 2 books, The Ghosts of Gold Mountain and also The Chinese and the Iron Road, Building the Transcontinental Railroad, in case anyone would like to read further, and you can read those stories of reclaimed from those Chinese railroad workers. And then the last thing to note during AAPI month is also that the Sierra Speaker Series is happening on May 18th, and that's at Donner Memorial State Park, and that's after the Iron Road, so kind of related histories.
And Virginia, if you will come and join me up here now, we have 2 proclamations for you. First is for Truckee Day. I think that's this one.
They both say Truckee
They
Day.
do both say Truckee Day. We'll go with this one. Then we'll do the second one. We'll do them both. So this first one, Virginia is going to be accepting this as the Truckee Day chair. So whereas Truckee Day happens every year on the first Saturday in June and will celebrate its 21st annual event on Saturday, June 1st, 2024. And whereas the event is a town-wide community effort to pick up roadside litter, in preparation for the summer season and to show our community pride. And 20 neighborhood check-in stations have been created throughout town, and community members have signed up to champion these stations. And efforts to recruit hundreds of volunteers to pick up litter have been successful and are still underway. And Truckee Day is funded through generous contributions made by the community. And to celebrate the conclusion of cleanup efforts, a community block party and barbecue from the Truckee Optimists, as well as a community expo, are planned for the afternoon of Truckee Day, commencing at noon at the Truckee River Regional Park. And to coincide with Tahoe Bike Month, Truckee Day volunteers are encouraged to ride their bikes to the block party, where a free bike valet will be provided at the Truckee River Regional Park. And the town wishes to acknowledge the contribution of donors, neighborhood champions, volunteers, and all the community members who take part in this long-standing Truckee tradition to better our environment. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that the first day of June 2024 is Truckee Day. Thank you. And Virginia will accept this one, and then we have another proclamation for Virginia right after this. So do you want to say a quick announcement about Truckee Day, and then we'll talk about you, or you just want to do it all together?
We'll do it all together.
Do it all together, okay. Okay, we have one more. We're going to do the Truckee Day Hall of Fame proclamation next. So, whereas Truckee Day happens the first Saturday in June each year. We've been over that. And on Saturday, June 1st, 2024, Truckee Day will celebrate its 21st year of making the streets shine brighter. And whereas the event is a townwide community effort to pick up and properly dispose of roadside litter in preparation for the summer season, and includes a townwide block party to celebrate Truckee Pride. And Virginia Donica has held the role as Truckee Day Chair for a decade and has been involved with planning Truckee Day for over 15 years. And whereas over a decade as Truckee Day Chair, Virginia has secured donations from hundreds of local business sponsors, packed over 200 check-in station supply boxes, organized over 5,000 volunteer lunches at the block party, and facilitated over 46 tons of trash to be collected from our Truckee streets, and recruited over 6,000 community members to take part in this event. I'm going to ad-lib for just a second here because we also have some representatives for our, from our Tahoe Truckee Sierra Disposal District here who are also great partners, I'm sure, on this great event. So it all kind of works together. Whereas Virginia will be stepping down from her role as Truckee Day Chair after volunteering thousands of hours of her time to make this long-standing community event possible, and Virginia has been a Truckee resident for over 20 years and is being recognized as a distinguished Truckee citizen who has shown a commitment to the betterment of the town of Truckee. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed by the mayor of the town of Truckee that Virginia Donica is receiving the Truckee Day Hall of Fame Award for 2024 to honor her efforts and contributions towards making Truckee Day a successful event year after year and helping to keep Truckee clean and green. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Here's all your proclamations.
Okay, thank you. I don't know what to say. These are a lot of numbers, and I would have never guessed, but I couldn't have done it without the support of the town and Mel and Erica and Aaron over the years, and just the community support, the volunteers, the donors, everyone, the disposal company. Thank you, and look forward to seeing everyone June 1st. There we are.
You want a picture? Did you get a picture? Oh, we got flowers, picture. I don't need to be.
Oh,
Mel should be in the picture, not me.
yeah, you did.
This one is for real.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You have to hold on all your hardware.
Oh, my goodness.
There, we'll-
Okay.
Let's go in front of the podium because it's always awkward when it's in front of us. Thank you for everything. Awesome. I think, Jen, 5.4, take it away.
Great. Good evening. Thank you. And tonight we're excited to introduce you to our a couple members of our Baker Tilly team. And Baker Tilly is the consultant team that the town has contracted with to complete our operational and service delivery assessment. So just a quick reminder for anybody watching at home or here in the audience, council approved this at the end of last calendar year in the winter. You approved authorization of the contract execution earlier this calendar year, around January, February. And fast forward to today, and we actually had our kickoff meeting this morning. The team has been on site for all of today and tomorrow, doing some initial interviews with town staff and town council. And then we are moving right along through the project work plan and hopefully coming back to you with a report and recommendations in January. So a very comprehensive look at the town as an organization, all of our departments, divisions, our service delivery model, staffing structure, really a holistic look at what we're doing. And I view this as we talk about the general plan being the roadmap for our community and where we're going as a community, and this is similar in that it's a roadmap for our organization and how we're going to plan for the next 30 or 40 years as an organization to meet those community expectations. So we asked a couple members of the team to join us tonight to just introduce themselves to any of the council members they haven't met yet, as well as the community. So with that, we have Andy and Al here with us. And Andy, I think you were going to say a few words. So thank you for being here tonight and coming back after a full day here on site.
Thank you, Jan, and my pleasure. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Andy Belknap, Managing Director with Baker Tilly, and Jen covered it very well. We kicked off today. We had a big meeting this morning with the department and division managers, and we talked about the project. A project like this, one of the managers said this is going to be a real milestone for Truckee, and I thought that really summarized it very well, because Truckee is really just a kind of an adolescent as far as cities go, because it's only 30 years old. And the typical city in California is right around 90 to 95 years old. Many of them are over 100 years old. And those first few years of existence, I well know, having worked with over 300 cities in California, that nothing is more difficult than the work of a newly incorporated city, because there is so much built up need and desire for self-government that it's just so hectic, so much going on for any new community. And I have a great deal of respect for everything that Truckee has been able to accomplish in just 30 years. And it's a very short period of time in the life of a city. So we did kick off today. Our objective is to conduct a complete operational and service delivery review that assesses all the operations across the town, look at the organizational structure, as Jen mentioned, look at service delivery and staffing within the town departments and divisions, examine the town's relevant policies, practices, and procedures with an eye towards making sure that they reflect best practices within the industry, and then to develop recommendations to help the town optimize operations and maximize efficiency and effectiveness. And I thought we had a great day today. I certainly learned a lot, and especially with respect to the unique challenges that we have here in Truckee, and met a lot of dedicated folks, including the mayor. And we look forward to accomplishing this project for you and delivering a valuable report to you in December, January timeframe. I'd be happy to answer any questions, except I will have to confess that I know just a fraction of what I will know. We're just beginning. But I do know how we do these projects, and we try to examine everything. And I also know that it's sort of natural for people to be a little bit apprehensive when we begin something like this, because this is their life's work in many respects. But I also know that when it's done, people feel really good about it because it's an investment. It's an investment in making their workplace and what they do with a big chunk of their life more productive, more valuable. And I'd like to thank you for making the investment, because I know from having done this work for 15 years, I know that it will pay off and it will pay dividends for Truckee.
Thank you very much, Andy. Yeah, if we have any questions, we'll let Jen do her town manager report, and then we'll circle back up for questions
And
on the whole thing. And you'll be here for many
The
more
other thing
months.
is, we'll be doing this work for several months, and if there's any questions, or the council would like any input, we're here for that, and we'd be happy to arrange it.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here, and it was a pleasure to meet you guys today. And with that, Jen, we'll let you do your town manager report, and then we'll do public comment and council questions on all of the presentations, should there be any.
Great. And just to follow up, if anybody in the community is wondering what this is, we are going to be sending out a fair amount of communication about this, as well as having some more community survey work and some stakeholder interviews and participation. So lots of opportunities to share your experiences with the town and what your expectations are in terms of service delivery. With that, I'm going to look over to the slide. I was going to remind everybody, but Mel did a great job, that it is Truckee Day coming up. So if you're interested in signing up to support a neighborhood or a team, you can do that on keeptruckeegreen.com and follow the links. You may have noticed that B-Cycle is back, so the bikes are out. We're seeing people use them already. Happy for that. We've had a few changes to some of the stations, but you can go on the B-Cycle website and check those out. And also some adjustments to their pricing plan. So I believe now the first hour is $7 rather than the first 30 minutes, and some other options. So encourage everybody to get out and use the B-Cycles. Weather is great for it, and summer is certainly here. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but I think it's worth repeating a couple of times. If you're interested in joining in on the Dark Skies photo competition, you can do that on the Sierra Sun website. And if you are interested in our Dark Skies lighting rebate program, there's a link to that information on our website as well. Just go to townoftruckee.gov, and up in Hot Topics, there'll be a banner selection for Dark Skies, and that'll take you to a couple more links, but get you right to the lighting rebate program for exterior dark sky compliant lighting. And then lastly, we do love our surveys here in Truckee, and we are out in town conducting another survey of voters right now to gauge interest in town services, particularly around things like TART Connect, other core service areas, housing, sustainability, and that is to help council with a future decision you have coming up about tax measures to support those services. So that survey's out now. You may get a text or an email from Donata. We use a third party to ensure confidentiality. They compile all the results for us, but we did want to let everybody know that that is work being done on behalf of the town. So please offer your opinions and fill out that survey so that we have some good information for the council to make future decisions on. And with that, that's all I have tonight, Mayor.
Great. Thanks, Jen. Before Baker Tilly takes off, any questions on this side for any of the presentations or presenters? No? One for Jen. Cool. I think you guys, well, we have to open public comment, but we won't respond to that anyway, so you guys are good. Thank you. Go ahead with any questions you have on any of the presentations.
Jen, I'm just wondering if we know who's going to take over for Virginia.
Hard shoes to fill, and we do not have a plan for that at the moment. So anybody wants to volunteer, we're taking nominations.
Okay, thank you. Yes, hard shoes to fill. She's done an extraordinary job.
Yeah, and we're super grateful for that, and we are looking for a new chair to take on that role. Just to repeat that request one more time so everybody could hear. Any public comment on any of the presentations or proclamations? Great. Seeing none, closing public comment, and we will move on to consent tonight. 6.1, we have minutes of our April 23rd council meeting. 6.2, authorization to increase power plant blanket purchase order. 6.3, lease to locals program update and placemate contract renewal. 6.4, accept the quarter ended March 31st treasurer's report. 6.5, adoption of the statement of investment policy for the 24-25 fiscal year. 6.6, contract award for budget software to ClearGov. 6.7, fiscal year 23-24, claim for Transportation Development Act state transit assistance funds from the Nevada County Transportation Commission. 6.8, authorized expenditures for utility construction observation agreement with Rail Pros for West River Street. 6.9, DOWL, that's the name of a company. Is that what that is? DOWL contract award for construction support services for the paving and drainage project. 6.10, local government building decarb challenge grant program application authorization. 6.11, acceptance of our quarterly financial status update. And 6.12, approval of a side letter with the mid-management employees group for temporary additional compensation. Would any member of council like to pull anything from consent? Staff?
No, Mayor.
Public? Seeing none, Councilmember Henderson, we have a motion to move consent.
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Zabriskie. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, consent passes. And we are ready for item 7.1, our solid waste franchise agreement amendments related to can averaging. And we have Aaron Brewster to introduce anybody else and this item. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I will be here tonight to present item 7.1, Council direction on solid waste franchise agreement amendments related to a can averaging billing system. That is quite a mouthful. So the purpose of this item is for Council to provide direction on a proposal from Tahoe, Truckee, Sierra Disposal to implement a can averaging billing system in Truckee. Pursuing a return to can averaging is one of TTSD's obligations under a class action settlement, and town staff have evaluated this proposal to determine if it is in the best interest of most Truckee ratepayers. I'll start tonight with a brief background on the franchise agreement and the current rate structure as it compares to can averaging, provide some context related to the class action settlement, and then quickly review the details of the can averaging proposal from TTSD, as well as the impacts on both residents and the town budget. Finally, we'll review staff's recommendations, as well as alternatives for council consideration. Our current franchise agreement began on July 1st, 2018. The term is 10 years, with the option for 3 one-year extensions upon mutual agreement with TTSD. As part of the current franchise agreement, a 3-container collection system was implemented in Truckee for both residential and commercial collection services. The addition of recycling and yard waste carts assisted the town in complying with new state regulations, including SB 1383, but it did increase costs. In order to mitigate these cost impacts, the town and TTSD moved away from a can averaging system, as the current billing system allows for a lower annual trash rate than would be possible under can averaging. The current model, staff felt that the current model also better aligned with the town's waste reduction goals. In our current rate structure, the annual residential trash rate includes collection of 1 32-gallon trash can per week for each residential customer. Residents do not receive any credit for weeks they do not set out trash for collection, and any extra trash set out in a container or bag is charged the extra can rate, commonly referred to as an overage charge. Overage charges also apply to excess trash from overflowing cans above the 32-gallon limit, as well as improperly set out or contaminated recyclables. This includes untied or contaminated blue bags and loose cardboard. I will say that most recorded overages are straightforward extra containers or bags of trash, and only around 10% are from overflowing cans, untied or contaminated blue bags, and loose cardboard combined. Keep Truckee Green includes information about overage charges and how to avoid them on our website and in our annual residential mailer sent to all residential property owners in Truckee each spring. And you can see an example here on this slide of an illustration of that is in our annual mailer. In addition to weekly trash collection, the annual rate, residential trash rate also includes a number of other services at no additional cost. I've listed a few of those here. I won't list them in detail. We do have 4 scheduled overages per year of up to 3 cans each available for residents. Those can be scheduled in the online customer portal. And I do want to note that the staff report incorrectly said those are scheduled by calling TTSD. They do have to be scheduled online, and the correct information is in our mailer and on our website, but I just wanted to make that correction here. So under a can averaging billing system, there is a quarterly rather than weekly allotment for trash disposal. These credits can be used at any time during the billing quarter, either 1 per week or multiple credits on a single day, which provides more flexibility for residents than the current system. And this flexibility can be especially valuable for part-time residents who have more variable trash disposal, or during snowstorms or other extreme weather events when it can be difficult to clear out bare sheds or clear berms. Can credits do not roll over from one billing quarter to the next and have no cash value, so residents would not be reimbursed for any unused credits at the end of the quarter. So this slide shows 2 scenarios for trash setouts during a quarter, both of which are using the same number of can credits. In the current billing system, scenario 2 would result in 2 overage charges for this quarter, but not have any overages under can averaging. So in our franchise agreement, rates are set based on calculated or estimated costs to TTSD for providing collection services each year, accounting for all sources of revenue, including overage charges and any other extra charges. As can averaging does not significantly change TTSD's costs for providing collection services, the total revenue would need to be equivalent under both billing systems in order to cover those costs. Under can averaging, the total revenue is the same, but a larger percentage of that revenue comes from the annual trash rate compared to extra charges. And that is why the switch to the current billing system allowed for a lower annual rate than would be possible under can averaging, and why returning to can averaging would require increasing the annual rate. You can see an illustration of the concept in this chart, although I'll note it's not to scale, it's just to sort of illustrate the concept. Because of this difference in the annual rate, the net cost impact of switching to can averaging on each resident will vary. As I mentioned before, this proposal is one of TTSD's obligations under a class action settlement. That agreement received final approval last July. The lawsuit was filed in 2020 regarding billing practices and extra fees. In addition to pursuing a return to can averaging billing system, the settlement requires a number of process improvements to address billing complaints. I'm not going to go into detail about those, but focus right now on the can averaging proposal. I do want to note that the town was not a party to the lawsuit, wasn't involved in the settlement agreement, and is not bound by that agreement. However, staff support making any changes to our collection programs if they would benefit most of our residents or businesses. So we reviewed this proposal to determine if that was the case. So these are the details of the can averaging proposal we received from TTSD, which is attached to the council report in its entirety. As proposed, this change would take effect beginning July 1st, 2025. Customers on 1 can service would receive 13 can credits per quarter, and that is the equivalent of an average of 1 per week. And customers on 2 can service would get 26 credits per quarter. These can credits would apply towards each 32-gallon can, and similarly to the additional items that qualify for overage charges now, those can credits could also be applied to loose cardboard, untied or heavily contaminated blue bags, or excess from overflowing cans. Credits can't be applied towards bulky items, charges for mess cleanups, or other special collection events that are covered under different programs. To account for the difference in revenue, additional rate increases would apply to the annual residential trash rate, the extra can rate or overage charge, and the second can rate for a period of 3 years. The rate increases would apply for 3 years, and then the rate would remain at the higher rate. The proposal also includes a 3-year extension of the franchise agreement through June 30th, 2031. To go into a bit more detail on the proposed additional rate increases, this would be an additional 1% on the annual residential trash rate and the extra can rate, and 1.5% on the second can rate. These additional increases would apply each year for 3 years and would be applied in addition to any rate increases calculated according to the rate setting methodology outlined in our franchise agreement. Overall, this would result in a 3% additional increase in the annual trash rate and extra can rate, and a 4.5% increase in the second can rate. No other rates would have an additional rate increase under this proposal. Using proposed fiscal year 24-25 residential rates as a basis for estimating the dollar value of these percentage-based increases, that works out to an additional $13.30 per year for 1-can customers and $24.34 per year for 2-can customers. However, the rate increases would not be calculated on next year's rates, but on the rates for the following 3 years. So if the rates are higher during that time, the actual cost difference would be higher as well. I do want to note that in calculating these additional rate increases, TTSD rounded down from the actual difference in revenue, so they are proposing to absorb that cost difference. They would also be, as proposed, absorbing the revenue lost from phasing this rate increase in over 3 years, rather than applying it all at once when the switch to can averaging would be made. And that is why they have proposed the 3-year franchise agreement extension to help offset the losses that would occur during the phase-in period. Before I move on to the analysis of the can averaging proposal, there are a few important points I want to emphasize to address some common misconceptions about can averaging. First, as I've previously mentioned, can averaging and the current billing system are revenue neutral to both TTSD and the town. Relatedly, overage charge revenue is included in the rate setting calculations and is not extra compensation for TTSD. I think that's a very common misconception about the current billing system. And this is why switching away from can averaging with the new franchise agreement allowed us to have a lower annual rate than would otherwise be possible. Third, can averaging does not universally result in lower costs for residents. Because of the higher annual rate, some residents will pay more overall and some will pay less, depending on their typical trash disposal habits. Last, I do want to mention that can averaging on its own does not directly address any billing issues a resident might be having in terms of the accuracy of those charges, since it doesn't change the way a driver is actually marking collection events. It does, though, provide a bit of a buffer for residents that have unused can credits that can mitigate the impact of those issues, but it doesn't address the root problem if it's occurring. So any billing inaccuracy would need to be addressed through alternative strategies, such as the other measures that TTSD has been implementing to address those changes. To evaluate the proposal and the underlying calculations provided by TTSD, town staff had HF&H consultants conduct an independent review. They found the proposal reasonable both financially and methodologically. And town staff also agree with TTSD that July 1st, 2025 is the earliest reasonable implementation date should council direct staff to implement can averaging due to the need to amend the franchise agreement to allow for this change. And it also has the benefit of aligning with a cost-based rate setting for fiscal year 25-26, which utilizes actual calculated costs rather than estimated costs. In addition to the review by HF&H, town staff conducted their own analysis of the impacts on residential ratepayers and the town budget. So the net cost difference for ratepayers in switching to can averaging depends on how many overages they typically have under the current system and how many unused credits they would have under can averaging from weeks they don't set out trash for collection. If a household currently pays more in overage charges than the incremental cost of the additional annual rate increase, then they may pay less under can averaging. So for one can customers, the 3% increase in the annual rate is equivalent to about 1.8 overages. For two can customers, the total increase in the annual rates is equivalent to about 3.3 overages. And so looking at data from 2023 to determine how can averaging may have impacted customer bills and see how many residential ratepayers met those thresholds, we determined the minimum percentage of customers that would pay less under the current billing system. So as you can see on the chart on the right, because the rate increase is phased in over 3 years, the minimum percentage of customers that pay less under the current system increases each year as the annual trash rate goes up. About 20% of households would pay less initially under can averaging, but eventually pay more once that additional rate increase is fully phased in. In year 3 and beyond, we estimate that at least 58% of residential ratepayers would pay more overall under can averaging. And that does include 37% of households that had zero overage charges in 2023, who would have the greatest total cost increase under the switch. Just to provide a bit more clarity about why it's a minimum percent that would pay less on that previous slide, not all residents who meet that threshold for overage charges would necessarily have enough available credits in that same billing quarter to fully offset those charges. So in these two scenarios here, you can see both have 2 overages under our current billing system, but only one has available credits to offset those overages. So the second scenario would still have 2 overages under can averaging. In terms of the impacts to the solid waste fund operating budget, if council directs staff to amend the franchise agreement, this will result in increased costs for consultant support for these negotiations. Staff have included these anticipated additional costs of around $26,000 in the proposed fiscal year 24-25 budget that council will consider at the next meeting. The solid waste fund is an enterprise fund that does not receive any support from the town's general fund. So ultimately, these costs are recovered through the administrative fee that's applied to solid waste rates. And that works out to just under $2 in additional annual costs per customer for fiscal year 24-25. And I do want to note that amending the franchise agreement would also require additional staff time to support that process and to conduct additional outreach to residents about the switch to the can averaging billing system. And this could delay a fiscal year 24-25 work plan projects as staff time is redirected to support that. If council does not direct staff to amend the franchise agreement to implement a can averaging billing system, these additional costs can be removed from the fiscal year 24-25 budget, resulting in a decrease in the proposed administrative fee. And these changes would be reflected in the solid waste rates brought to council for consideration on June 11th. Based on our analysis, staff do not recommend amending the franchise agreement to implement a can averaging billing system. The primary reason is that this switch would likely result in increased total costs for the majority of residential ratepayers. Additionally, staff believe that the current system better incentivizes waste reduction in alignment with the town's goals. Staff does also not recommend extending the current franchise agreement with TTSD due to changes required for SB 1383 compliance and other changes that we would recommend implementing to the commercial collection services, which would be easier to do as part of a new franchise agreement. If the franchise agreement is extended, these changes would either need to be delayed or we would need to amend the existing extended franchise agreement to accommodate them. And I will note that TTSD has expressed a willingness to work with the town to accommodate any feasible program changes if needed if the franchise agreement is extended. Keep Truckee Green staff have also been working to enhance outreach about overage charges and how to avoid them, recycling contamination, and to encourage labeling of carts and bear sheds to reduce inaccurate billing. And we do plan to enhance outreach about the scheduled overage program as well. So should council believe that the added flexibility of the can averaging system is worth the additional cost to some residents, we have outlined 4 possible scenarios under which we could amend the franchise agreement. So the first would be to amend the franchise agreement under the terms proposed by TTSD, including the additional rate increases and 3-year extension. The second is to amend the franchise agreement to return to can averaging with a one-time additional rate increase in fiscal year 25-26, but without extending the franchise agreement term. And scenarios 3 and 4 are the same as the first 2, but include having staff explore cost savings from cutting some optional residential services. These optional services are ones that are not required for compliance with any state regulations, but are in some cases very popular programs that have additional benefits, including supporting defensible space clearing. So I do want to clarify that staff does not recommend eliminating these services. What we are recommending is that staff, if council directs staff to amend the franchise agreement, we evaluate options for potentially reducing costs to mitigate the rate increase. And with that, our official recommendation is direct staff to decline the proposal from Tahoe, Truckee, Sierra Disposal to amend the solid waste franchise agreement to implement a can averaging billing system in the town of Truckee. I'm happy to take your questions, and I also want to let you know that we have Jeff Collins, General Manager of TTSD, and Brian Kemper, Accounting Manager for TTSD, here as well, in case you have any questions for them about their proposal.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Did any presentation? Did offer them a chance to, do you guys want to say a few words, or are you guys good? If you want to speak for 3 minutes or so, or less, or longer, you tell me.
Hi, Jeff Collins, Tahoe Truckee Disposal. We're simply here to answer questions. Well, Aaron's very adeptly presented the information here. I would only add to that, or supplement it, that can averaging is, there's a history behind this where it's something that this company proposed, I think, if not the late 60s, certainly by the 70s, to help with the providing service here to help with the infrequencies of service based on second homeowners, based on snow events that would prevent people to get the garbage out, and where it would be a fair process. It's not something that I'm aware any company does. I'm anywhere. I've never heard of this. Anytime we have it reviewed, people say, "What?" And it's very difficult to understand. But again, Aaron did a terrific job of presenting it there. But we're here to answer questions if you like.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much. Councilmember Klostad, any questions for staff or our representatives? Councilmember Romack.
Just quick, Aaron, you mentioned how many households had zero overage charges?
Based on 2023 data, it was around 37% had none.
Okay, thank you. I just missed the number. And then there was an additional $1.98 in annual administrative costs that would stay the same annually. That wouldn't increase 1% in their proposal, or?
No, that is just a one-time additional cost for us to have consultant support in amending our franchise agreement. So that would just only apply to next fiscal year and would not be an ongoing part of the administrative fee.
And then on the optional charges, I know you're not recommending to cut any of them, and I should have asked this in advance, but do you have a sense of how many property owners utilize some of those optional services?
I would have to defer to TTSD for numbers. I'm not sure they would have that at their disposal right now, but I know our green waste sort of drop-off program is very popular. And I will also mention that we haven't done a thorough evaluation of what potential cost reductions would be available from cutting those services, or even if it would be feasible. We do know that they would not fully offset the additional rate increase, but there would be potentially some cost savings, and we would have to evaluate that. But they are definitely some of those very popular programs.
Thank you. That's it.
Councilmember Henderson, any questions?
I think just one. So I know we heard a primary benefit is flexibility to ratepayers, especially, if they have a lot of trash one week, maybe none another week, and then also related to winter storms or other events. Are there any other sort of primary benefits that we didn't talk about, or are those the main ones? And I'm sort of looking to both. So whoever wants to answer.
I can give a couple, and then by all means, Jeff or Brian, if you have additional comments, please help me out here. But it would, I think we gave some numbers in the staff report, but it would substantially reduce the number of bills that are generated, because they would not be generated, overage charges would not be generated weekly, but at the end of a billing quarter. And so that does reduce, I think by by 10,000 at least, the number of total bills issued. So that is a benefit, potentially. I'll defer to our TTSD representatives for additional comment.
Yeah, it was about 11,000 that it would save in total bills. So what I usually hear on customer complaints when they're calling is usually the misunderstanding and, how come I can't leave it out when there's all this snow and they can't get it. So customer satisfaction is a big reason. So.
Thank you both.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Aaron, your report was extremely comprehensive and clear, which really reduces my questions. And I just want to make sure I understand that the rate increase for one can would be a little over $13 a year, and for two cans, a little over $24 a year.
So I can't give you the final dollar amount at this time. That was just to illustrate what the percentage-based increases are compared to next year's proposed rates, but those percentages would not be applied to next year's rates, but the following three rates. So it may be higher than that it will be higher than that if rates go up, but it's a percentage of the current year's rate.
Okay, and then the administrative fee increases what a customer pays even more.
Yeah, so the percentage-based increases apply to TTSD's portion of the rate. The town applies an administrative fee on top of that rate for residential customers to recover our operating costs, because our solid waste program does not get support from the general fund. And so that is calculated each year based on our actual budgeted costs. And so that can go either up or down depending on that year's budget, but it is applied. The percentage-based increase would not apply to the administrative fee portion of the rate.
Okay, I thought I saw in your report that we'd have an increase in the administrative fee of $1.98 if we went to can averaging.
That would only apply to next year's rate. Again, the one-time costs for consultant support, and that would not be ongoing.
Okay. I saw public comments supporting staff's position. I didn't see any in favor of switching back to can averaging. Have you received any comments or remarks from the public in favor of the town switching over to can averaging?
I can go through and look at the public comments. I believe we received a couple in favor, and I think I saw one supporting the recommendation to not switch over.
Yeah, it came in at 424. So
Okay, so there was Paul Davo, 424. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think it's fair to point out that we have gotten a smattering of comments from members of the public within the last couple months on this, even if they didn't repeat them specifically for this meeting. So we've gotten maybe half a dozen advocating for a return to can averaging. And some of them are advocating for that out of a misunderstanding of what the settlement agreement entails. Some people in the public have thought that the settlement agreement required the town to return to can averaging, which of course it does not. But there has been some sentiment, and I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. And did any of those comments include reasons other than the ones Aaron provided? I mean, the ones that made sense, if you will.
Well, they're all somewhat unique, but there are. I think that the comments have largely come from people who are second homeowners, who feel that they're being charged unfairly and feel that they would pay less under a can averaging system. But I don't want to speak for them.
Okay.
I will say some of them certainly thought that it indicated that they thought can averaging would just credit them and were not aware that the base rate would go up. So I think we haven't received any comments like that directly in response to the staff report. These were all received several weeks prior or earlier.
Okay, thank you. Those are all my questions.
My only question is a follow-up to Councilmember Henderson and maybe for you, Brian. Even though we're going to potentially reduce 11,000 invoices or overage charges, I believe I read in the staff report, any overage charges in that under a can averaging system would take place quarterly. And so there would just be a longer potential period. Like if somebody put out 5 cans in week 1, but then went 12 weeks with just 1 can per week, they could be equally as annoyed with the system because they're going to forget that 12 weeks ago they actually put out 5. So there'd be less invoices, but a longer duration of a period of potential invoicing.
So we've always billed quarterly for residential.
Okay.
So it'll be the same billing cycle. As far as how many cans they've used, they can go online to see how many they've done, but it's not, they've kind of got to be shown how to do it, which we could always throw something up that shows them where to go to look to see how many they've put out, how many have been counted.
Okay.
So.
Okay. So it'd still reduce overall paperwork and accounting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but if they put out 15 cans on that first day, they'd get charged 2 overages, but for that one day, but nothing else.
And they wouldn't get that invoice until 12 weeks later.
Correct.
Right. Okay. And that's how it currently works.
Currently, yes. We were looking to try to get the invoices to come out when they hit where they've only got 1 more can left to get a notification or email or something like that.
Yeah.
But our software company hasn't gotten back to us yet on that.
Cool. Right on. Thank you for trying.
Yeah.
That's all my questions. Of course.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Of TTSD, is can averaging more difficult on the people actually picking up the garbage? Because then they have to keep track of every house, how many cans there are, whereas now it's just, if you have 1, fine, 1, fine. They're only keeping track if you have more than 1.
It's actually easier for us just because they're all trained in all the other jurisdictions. So all the other jurisdictions we do have can averaging, so they're used to it. So it's actually Truckee that's the harder one.
Thank you.
Interesting. Great. Any other questions from council? No. Open public comment on this item. Any member of the public wish to speak on this agenda item? Negative. Closing public comment. We will bring it back for council deliberation, and I think you had first go, Councilmember Klostad.
Oh, thank you. I think the staff report, as Vice Mayor Zabriskie indicated, was very clear and covered all the pros and cons. I don't really have much to deliberate on this. I think it's pretty clear that it's in both the town's best interest and the majority of our constituents' best interest to keep the system as is. That would be my advocate.
Councilmember Romack.
Well said, Councilmember Klovstad, and I agree with your comments.
Take it away.
Yeah, I would just say, 1, thank you for being here tonight. I know you guys put a lot of work into the proposal. I do think that everything that I've seen in the staff report does make me concur with my fellow council members. I just see too many risks in terms of the increased cost to our ratepayers, risks related to extending the franchise agreement with some of the constraints that we know we want to be able to tackle in the next RFP. So I would be more comfortable staying with our current system.
Go ahead, Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
I agree with my fellow council members.
I am incredibly grateful for all of your brevity. This is very impressive. Thank you. I will also simply add that I believe I am also in agreement. I'm also in agreement because we have taken 7 years, however long we've been under the existing franchise agreement, and we've put together so much education and we've done so much outreach to try to explain our existing franchise agreement. And I feel like we're just still constantly educating and also making progress. And I feel like switching right now would sort of just shoot us in the foot and a little bit, in my opinion. And I also agree with the majority who are achieving that 1 can rate, who are, over 35% are really successfully working within our system. And I think we can continue to get that number up. So I'm in agreement with all of you. Did you want to add something?
I mean, you pretty much so did. That was the point I wanted to make, that I feel like we've really invested a lot of time and energy in education. Yeah. This would just be a distraction. Yeah. And I would really appreciate, I do really appreciate you guys being here. You've been great collaborating partners on this. I appreciate your willingness in working with us for the future transitions and amendments that we're going to need to make to keep up with our state regulations. And I know our staff will invest the additional time and energy that would have gone into this transition into further education and helping our constituents be successful.
Yeah, I would agree.
Also wanted to know,
I think your mic on.
Given the extensive work done by Aaron and others on this project, I think TTSA is more than satisfied the terms of the settlement on this point.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well. Thank you for adhering to that settlement agreement and putting in the effort to, at least present opportunities for change and proposals. And we look forward to continue working with you on some of the other aspects of that agreement, and also appreciate your attendance here tonight. So thank you. It is not for naught that we went through this exercise. So thank you very much. With that, let's, I don't think we need to do a roll call. We could all take, I guess we need to entertain a motion. Vice Mayor Zabriskie, can we get a motion on 7.1?
I move we direct staff to decline the proposal from Tahoe Truckee Sierra Disposal to amend the solid waste franchise agreement to implement a can averaging billing system in the town of Truckee. In other words, I move we accept staff's recommendation.
I'll
I second.
We'll get Councilmember Klofstad on record for seconding, mostly because I looked to my left first. And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, we appreciate everybody's time on this. Thank you very much, guys. Yep. Okay. Item 7.2, we have Nola Mitchell presenting the parcel charges for the TSSA Town Special Service Areas and Permanent Road Divisions. And we get presence of Mr. Womack alongside as well. Oh, good. Lots of evacuation talk. That's why we get you, I am assuming. Excellent job. Thank you. Well, exactly.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nola Mitchell, and tonight I'll be speaking on a topic I haven't presented to you before, the parcel charges for town special service areas and permanent road divisions. So to start off with, we just have a map here laying out where the TSSAs and PRDs are in the town. Tonight we're going to focus on the TSSA 1 Tahoe Donner area and the TSSA 5 area in Glenshire, the Glenshire area. The purpose of tonight's public hearing, there's three main points. We're going to accept any public input concerning the parcel charges for all the TSSAs and PRDs in the town of Truckee. We'll discuss allowable uses of the TSSA funds, and then we have a resolution to adopt that will set the parcel charges for the 24-25 fiscal year. So the current annual parcel charges have not changed. They're the same for TSSA 1 and 5 as they've been. So right now we're at about $597,000 for the Tahoe Donner TSSA 1 parcel charges, and about $179,000 for Glenshire, Devonshire, and that's TSSA 5. The public comment period kind of kicked off with a letter that Becky Bucar wrote on March 20th, 2024. That was a letter to the Tahoe Donner Association, TDA. In the letter, she outlined the TSSA 1 funds, what the approved uses for, and suggested some projects to use them for. We got a response letter from the TDA on April 18th. In the response, the TDA suggested a couple of new uses and some new projects. So our recommendations for the TSSA 1 funds is that the parcel charges in Tahoe Donner continue at their current levels. Those stay the same as they've been. The second bullet here outlines the uses, and I want to point out the text that's bold and underlined. Those are the two new uses that TDA asked for and we're recommending. So they include emergency preparedness and roadway safety infrastructure, and then also design and construction of emergency egress improvements. The rest of the language is the same as it was in the past: drainage, trails, enhanced snow removal, all of those great uses, eligible uses. So expected uses for TSSA 1 funds in the fiscal year 24-25. We're looking at continued enhanced road maintenance. That's the same as it's been. Also, the Tahoe Donner Trail project is the same as in the past. The two new projects we're looking at are emergency evacuation planning and emergency access, and also an emergency access feasibility study. I'm going to talk about both of these projects in more detail on the next slide. And then there's also, just to mention, a potential future project we're looking at is to initiate community polling. And that polling is regarding finance options for the Pioneer Trail and Bridge Street extension projects in fiscal year 26-27, so in the future. So these are the two new uses, and then allowing for these two new projects that I mentioned before. So these are TSSA 1 projects that were requested by the Tahoe Donner Association. So the first would fall under our CIP project 1913. It's not a new project, but it would be additional funding into the emergency evacuation planning, CIP, and that funding would be used to add 2 additional flock cameras. TDA also requested an increased evacuation signage. At this point, staff is saying that needs more evaluation, so we're not proposing for budget to be used, for TSSA funds to be used for that at this time. The second CIP project is 2513. This would be a new CIP project requested that would it would be a feasibility study looking at additional emergency egress for Tahoe Donner. This project would evaluate 3 to 5 alternatives, and those alternatives would provide emergency access to the Tahoe Donner subdivision. The study would be led by the TDA, and they would use a consultant to do the study, and they'd have a reimbursement agreement with the town. I'm going to shift over to discuss the TSSA 5, the TSSA 5 now, and that process kicked off with a letter to the Glenshire Devonshire Residents Association on April 1st, 2024. Similarly, the letter described the TSSA 5 funds and the history, the approved uses, and staff recommended ways to use the funds. We didn't get a formal letter back from the GDRA, but we have been in email communication with them from April up till now, and have an understanding. So our recommendations for the TSSA 5 funds is that the parcel charges in the Glenshire, Devonshire area continue at their current levels. And then we also recommend that funds continue to be eligible for the same things they have been: roadway, drainage, trails, and transit services. So expected uses of the TSSA 5 funds for the fiscal year 24-25 would be the same as it's been: enhanced road maintenance with paving and drainage. In email conversations, the GDRA did mention they would like to possibly create a more formal bicycle crossing for Glenshire Drive near the Legacy Trail entrance, so that's a potential future project. Although I've only talked about TSSA 1 and 5, there are other TSSAs and PRDs. However, at this time, there's no projects and no recommended parcel charge for these areas for the 24-25 fiscal year. So that wraps up my presentation today. Our recommendations are that we conduct a public hearing on the town special service areas and the permanent road divisions, and that we adopt the resolution 2024-24, setting assessments for the 24-25 fiscal year. And I'm here to help, probably to pass off your questions to my right and to my left, but I'm here to answer anything that I can. Thank you very much.
So, Mayor, just two quick follow-up items on this. One, as it relates to what tonight's action would do, is it would set the assessment rates in the TSSA areas for next fiscal year, and it would set the allowable uses. You know, there's been discussion of, you know, specific projects that this could fund. That action would formally be taken as part of the budget. So I just wanted to be clear on that. So like doing a study on additional emergency egress routes from Tahoe Donner, you wouldn't be providing direction on that or approving the budget on that tonight. That would come later. But the association has requested that the funds be eligible for that type of use in the future. And then what staff has done in your draft budget, which will be considered at your May 28th and then your first meeting in June, is put some recommendations in that to that effect. Second point is we've got Annie Rosenfeld from the Tahoe Donner Association with us tonight. I know Annie has another commitment that she might be a little bit overdue on right now, so I'll leave it to the mayor's discretion as to whether or not you want to hear from her now or not.
We very much appreciate that heads up. Thank you, Dan. Is everybody okay if we open public comment first, and we can open it up a second time if we need to as well? Annie, we will open public comment for you. So come on up.
There we go.
There you
Good
go.
evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me to provide public comment. Appreciation for the multiple events going on in one evening. First, the Council has a copy of Tahoe Donner's letter that is supported on behalf of the Board of Directors. And I want to also thank the town staff, both the engineering department and the Office of Emergency Services, for continuing to work with us. It's been a really positive work relationship, and we hope to continue to strengthen that through our request in the changes to eligible uses of TSSA 1 funds today, and then as you consider approving your budget over the next few weeks. So thank you for the opportunity, and I am here to support our letter and to support the town council for your volunteer time in the budget process, which is lengthy. So thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Any other public comment on this item? We will close public comment, and for anybody, we will open it again during our regular process, should we so need to. Councilmember Henderson, any questions for staff on this?
I just have one question. Maybe it's a clarification. So I did want to acknowledge we received one public comment noting that they really saw the expertise in emergency evacuation residing within Town Hall, and I think some consternation that Tahoe Donner might be the lead in evacuation planning. Now, we're not taking any action on that tonight, right? Just the charges themselves, but I do wonder if it's appropriate if Bob could just respond to that a little bit. Or perhaps how that collaborative process would work.
Well, I think it would be a couple of things. One, obviously engineering would be a part of that along with OES. To me, it doesn't really matter who you call the lead. I think we're all going to be in it, and I would say probably the fire district will also be a part of that if we're talking about emergency evacuations, particularly related to wildfire. So, I mean, whoever's leads the lead, we're all going to have to work on it.
So perhaps we just need some communication to Tahoe Donner residents that it truly is a collaboration between a lot of different agencies. Okay, that's the only question I have. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie, any questions?
I had the same concern as Councilmember Henderson, and there was also a response in the written council questions reflecting what you said, which I appreciate. That was helpful. We're not simply delegating responsibility to Tahoe Donner, were we to put this in the budget down the road. Also, most of my questions were directed at the project level, which we're going to put off until the budget process. So a lot of this I think I can save for
the budget hearing in 2 weeks.
Or for deliberation, so we can, to help us start thinking about this. Has the fire district been involved in in Tahoe Donner's letter, their presentation? Did Tahoe Donner get input on that? Do we know?
I don't know if Tahoe Donner did. I did talk to the fire marshal this morning. Again, probably somewhat down in the weeds, but he supports the town actions and the kind of widths and roadways and things we were talking about in terms of emergency evacuation.
Okay. Would you like an answer from Ms. Rosenfeld?
Yes.
Annie?
Because I want to ask her, if I may. Yes,
Yeah, that's fine. She's here. Let's use her expertise.
Yeah, Andy, I'd generally be interested in what kind of input did the board get from the fire district or TD's forester, your own professional forester?
Yes, we have dedicated staff that has been collaborating both with Truckee Fire, United States Forest Service, and also CAL FIRE on a variety of topics, including emergency evacuation. And it's not just evacuation, it's access into the association. We want to make sure that the emergency operations can get into Tahoe Donner, and not just reviewing of how we get the residents out of Tahoe Donner. It goes both ways.
Okay, your letter mentioned 3 to 5 alternative routes. Do you already have some contemplated? How'd you arrive at 3 to 5?
We have some ideas, yes, as we've been talking with the Forest Service and CAL FIRE, and certainly Bob and I have been talking for many years, and our work with Down. I think this assessment is really getting to that next level as opposed to a conceptual idea. This gets us to what information do we need in order to evaluate. I know other communities have done this, and so just really trying to explore and think outside of the box as opposed to just focusing on the end-all answer of the third access road.
Okay. Are you going to stay for our deliberations, do you know?
I would love to, but I have a car full of children I have to go pick up, so I apologize.
I just think it might be helpful in our budget discussions to know what evacuation alternatives TDs are thinking of, what work's already been done, analyzing them, what the reference is to expanded defensible spaces near congestion areas. Actually, there's a lot of detail that couldn't be covered in the letter that we would probably want to get into.
And I might just cut you both off right now and suggest that this either go offline as a preparation for the budget meeting or come back to us as part of a budget discussion, because it's not necessarily pertinent to allowing those funds to be used without having to get into the weeds, and so you can pick up your kids.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Is that okay?
Yeah, right on.
Okay. Do you have any other questions? No. Okay. I agree. I think it raises a ton of project-related questions that we'll have to figure out some time to make sure that we have next time. This end, Councilmember Romack.
No questions. Thank you.
And Klostad.
I just have one, only because we're talking about both Tahoe Donner and Glenshire at the same time. And they both appear currently to have 2 accesses, two ingress and 2 egress each. Is that correct? So we're equitable in that realm.
Yes, the overall subdivisions in both have 2-access egress.
Just asking. Thank you.
And no further questions from me at this time, although I do agree with the bike crossing. Let's quickly open up public comment. In Glenshire. Yes, I'm just going to throw that in there before deliberation. I'll bring it back up again. We're opening public comment just one more time quickly. Seeing none, we will also close public comment one more time and bring it back to the dais. Again, we're not commenting on the specific how the funds will actually get used. We're just saying they can be used for the purposes identified before us. So Councilmember Henderson, any comments, additional comments?
No additional comments. I think we've seen the TSSAs come to us every year, so I feel comfortable with this, and we'll look forward to more conversations as we get into budgeting.
Yeah, agreed. Vice Mayor Zabriskie?
Yeah, I just am concerned about all the questions that the proposed project raises, and I'm not going to dwell on it, but probably the chief one is how what TD's proposing seems to be too narrow, that it's a conceptual thing where we need to be looking across the board at how to improve evacuation, and it's not necessarily building more egress or access. So it's just a matter of looking at the whole panoply of ways of improving safety. Other than that, I agree with staff's recommendation. I agree with the language they've proposed and the amended language at the beginning. So I'm ready to proceed.
And you can we can propose a removal of that language on emergency access if you so desire, just to be clear. Like, yeah. I think because I agree, I think the flock cameras are important. That's going to be the baseline. Information, we can pull out the other piece if you want to. I'm just providing that flexibility.
I'm fine for now.
Councilmember Roback, any additional comments?
Nope, appreciate Councilmember Henderson's comments and agree with those.
Yeah.
I'm ready to make a recommendation.
Please do so.
I move that we conduct a public hearing on town special service areas, TTSAs, and permanent road divisions, PDRs, and adopt resolution 2024-24, setting assessments for the 24-25 fiscal year.
I'll second.
And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you very much. We look forward to discussing this in greater detail in 2 weeks. That soon. We just had a 3-week break, so how it works. We only get one bye. Judy Price's terminology, one bye every few months. So. Where are we? 7.3. Do you guys need a break? Are you good? Keep going? Or you want a break? Yeah. Was that a yes break or keep going? I agree. It's going to take a while. That's why
Can
I
we
asked.
take our break a little early?
Sure.
Tonight?
Let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
7-minute break. We'll reconvene at 8. 7. We'll reconvene at 6:40 by that clock. Thank you.
We're reconvened. Item 7.3, proposed housing program guidelines for the Rooted Renters Pilot Program. Yes.
Hi, good evening. I'm Annika. I'm a Civic Spark Fellow at the town, and today I'll be presenting on the Rooted Renters Pilot Program guidelines. Just a brief overview, the Rooted Renters Pilot Program, previously known as the Long-Term Rental Preservation Program, is a new housing program that utilizes existing housing stock to lock in workforce rental units at affordable prices for multiple years, providing housing stability for the local workforce. The program offers financial incentives to property owners who commit to renting long-term to income-qualified local workers for at least 3 years and to keeping the rent below market rate. So in January, staff brought the framework for the Rooted Renters program to council and presented a few key decisions and recommended directions for the program. Here's a brief overview of the 5 areas staff asked for feedback in. First, staff recommended that the maximum rent be based on the number of bedrooms versus a general rent cap like lease to locals, and council supported this recommendation. Second, staff proposed a rent cap structure based on area median income and market rate rental prices, which council directed staff to move forward with as well. Third, staff proposed a 25-25, 50% incentive distribution structure with payments at the end of each program year. And council supported the total incentive amount, but suggested 4 payments starting at 6 months and then following at the end of each year of the program instead. Fourth, staff proposed a 3-year term length, which council provided staff direction to go forward with. And fifth, staff recommended that previous lease to locals participants be allowed to enter the program after 6 months. Council also directed staff to have separate funding buckets for lease to locals and non-lease to locals participants after the first 6 months to ensure equitable fund distribution. And the next few slides will highlight proposed changes staff has made to the program since January. So first, in terms of eligible property owners, based on council's recommendations, staff is proposing that previous lease to locals participants will not be eligible to apply for the program in the first 6 months of Rooted Renters. After 6 months, council will review the program, and based on Rooted Renters demand and funding, council will decide whether to expand the program to previous lease to locals participants and also decide if 2 separate funding buckets are needed. This decision will ensure that program funds are prioritized to preserve additional rental units and lower rental rates in units that are already long-term renting, as nearly 70% of lease to locals units continue to be rented long-term to the local workforce after program completion. Next, maximum rent and allowed rent increase. So the table here on the slide shows the maximum rent increase allowed for each year of the program, with proposed rents based off 120% of area median income affordability. These rates are calculated for just the first cohort that enters the pilot program, and they will be recalculated for each following cohort based on yearly area median income updates. Staff recommend that the pilot program allow a participating landlord to implement a maximum increase of 7% rent per year for years 2 and 3 of the property's participation in the program. This is a new recommendation from January, and it's based on feedback from Placemate that a fixed maximum increase will provide transparency and assurance for renter households as well as property owners to know exactly how much the maximum rent will be throughout the 36 months of the program for both groups. And then finally, this table shows the distribution of incentive payments for the program. These have been updated slightly for the program. Following council direction, the incentives will be split into 4 payments instead of 3. However, staff recommend that the first payments happen at the 0-month mark upon tenant verification and lease signing instead of the 6-month mark that council recommended, since this is in line with lease to locals payment timing, and it has also been successful with the lease to locals model in the past. As you can see, either way, the payments will get progressively larger to incentivize homeowners to remain in the program for the entire duration while still providing compensation throughout the 36 months to assist with costs related to owning and renting a home. So in terms of anticipated timeline, In May and June, pending council approval for the program, staff and Placemate will work on program marketing, create a property owner interest list, and translate all program materials into Spanish. The program will launch on July 14th, and the pilot program will last through fiscal year 2025 and 26. In January 2025, approximately 6 months from program launch, Council will evaluate the program and make a decision regarding previous leased to locals participants and their allowed participation in rooted renters. And at the end of fiscal year 2025-26, Council will evaluate the program and consider any program revisions as well as program continuation. With that, staff recommends that Council approve the Rooted Renters Pilot Program draft guidelines and approve a $65,000 contract with Placemate to provide administrative and marketing support services for the program. Thank you.
Well done, Annika. Well under your 15 minutes. My gosh. Very impressive. We have some questions, I am sure. So thank you very much. Are we hearing from anybody else yet? No, we're just going to stick with staff for right now. We do have our lovely representative from Placemate. If anybody has any specific questions to ask as well, and we can take that if we need to. So, Councilmember Romack, have you gone first yet? I've lost track. Okay,
I'm happy to go.
Go ahead.
I was curious how the 7% rent increase, how did you land on 7% per year?
Yeah, so staff based that off of California law. While California law does not have any maximum rent increases for single-family homes, they do have rent increase law for non-single family homes, so we based it off that. That law says that it can either be 10% of the area median income, sorry.
You're right.
10% increase. 10% increase or a 5% increase with the addition of cost of living. And so we looked at cost of living, and it was generally around average 2% per year, which gave around a 7% increase for non-single family homes. And so we based it off of that.
Thank you. And then I don't know if this is Placemate potentially, because we know you do a great job running the lease to locals. Does Placemate run other programs like this, or is this a new venture you'd be undertaking?
And Isaac, please introduce yourself, if you will.
Is that on now? Yep.
Yes, it is.
I'm Isaac. I'm Isaac Landman here from Placemate. We do not currently administer any programs like this. This has been a collaboration with our partners at the town to put together this kind of new and innovative type of program.
Thank you. That's it on questions, but I like the name change. I don't know who came up with that, but put down roots, I like it. That's it.
Awesome. Councilmember Klostad? No questions. Vice Mayor Zabriskie?
Could you go back to the first table where you were showing, on the year one, this table, on the one bedroom, year one rent is, there may be a number transposed. You have $1,250 down there for one bedroom. Could it be $1,520 instead?
Yeah, I think that's correct. It should be 1520.
Okay.
Thank you for catching that.
And I think those are all my questions. Thank you for your presentation.
You stumped Vice Mayor Zabriskie. Other than a typo, that is truly impressive. Good work. He's coming back. No, I thought he was coming back. I thought I spoke too soon. Councilmember Henderson, go ahead.
I appreciated Councilmember Romack's question on the 7%. I had the same question, so thank you for that. My only other question was, I did have a question on the name change. Why are we moving away from long-term rental preservation? And I ask because this has kind of gone through a few iterations in naming, and I feel like that can create confusion in the marketplace. So I'm actually curious, what the rationale is for another name change.
So we actually haven't launched this program publicly, so it hasn't been long-term rental preservation. We're not changing the name of Lease to Locals. It will only be this, and we wanted to have separate branding for this program because it is different than Lease to Locals. Lease to Locals is in 10 jurisdictions now. So we did want to have it separate, but, stick with the alliteration. And the goal is to never change the program name again after we've done this.
So just to clarify, we're going to stick, we will still have lease to locals. We will still use that terminology. And just sort of a lot of our conversations around long-term rental preservation program, which was very long, we will not be using now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
that
you.
was really a placeholder name we had in the CIP for we want to develop a program that addresses long-term rental preservation. And so until we came up with a better name, that's what we were calling it. Sorry for the confusion on that.
Great. Just a couple quick questions for me. I was just trying to quickly find it, but I couldn't. Can you remind us what the AMI levels are for lease to locals, both for participants and max rental rates?
They're the same.
They're the same.
Yeah.
So for participation, it's 150% AMI. There is only a single rent cap for the whole program at $3,500. So you could charge $3,500 for a 1-bedroom or $3,500 for a 5-bedroom, which we wanted to get away from for this program. So it has specific rent caps for each unit size.
And so walk us through just the scenario if the 6-month if the 6-month hiatus was eliminated and we wanted to take a 1-bedroom that's currently in lease to locals and allow that to transition, would they be looking at a rent reduction potentially, or how what does that look like sort of in real life, maybe using one of the units as an example, if we have that, because I have a feeling it's not $3,500 for a 1-bedroom necessarily.
Right. It just depends what they're renting now. They would have to do a rent reduction to meet the rents in the Rooted Renters program. And they would also have to sign a new 12-month lease to participate in the Rooted Renters program if they wanted to continue with the tenants they had in the lease to locals program, if we were allowing some sort of combined program transfer like that.
Mm-hmm. And maybe a question for Isaac, since we now have some data on tracking what happens after somebody participates in lease to locals, what are we seeing? Rent increases? Are we seeing rent stabilization? Sort of what's happening out there in the real world with folks that are coming out of lease to locals? But I believe you gave us a number where over 60% are still staying in long-term rental. So what are we seeing as those rents are changing?
As far as rent increases or
decreases? Rent increases or decreases or any of that.
Yeah,
really.
so I believe that was in the lease to local staff report. Looks like Annika's pulling it up. I'll let them give you the numbers. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
So our numbers in the lease to local staff report, most property owners, 52%, which was 24 who responded to the survey, have increased their rent by an average of $201 per month. 17 owners kept their rent the same, which was 37%, and a small portion, 11%, or 5 property owners reduced their rent by an average of $95 per month.
Okay. And then we did receive a fairly lengthy public comment on this one, and speaking to the program contract, which I actually thought was quite astute, we're looking at a 3-year program, or at least funding structure here, but yet we're not signing that long of an administrative contract with our partners here. So I guess why not? And why wouldn't we? And what happens if we don't renew their contract and we're in year 2?
Generally, we do one. Generally, we do 1-year contracts for program administrators. We've been doing that with lease to locals, even though there has been multi-years with payments going over multiple years. If for some reason we chose not to renew the contract with Placemate, we would find a different program administrator. We don't have any plans on doing that, but we could potentially do a 2 or 3 year contract with Placemate if that's something that council would like to direct us to, unless there's some reason not to.
And just because I didn't necessarily read the contract, do we own the data, or does Placemate own the data? And are we assured that there's no loss of record data throughout any type of transition?
I don't actually recall what it says about data.
We
We'll have
can,
to look.
yeah, we
Might be something we want to just double check. Yeah.
We can pull that up and look, but I think the takeaway is there was no particular reason for not doing a 3-year agreement, other than that's not typically what we do. Should Placemate decide it's not the program for them, it gives them a shorter time commitment. This is a new program again, so we're all going to be working through it together.
Yeah, I mean, and no offense to Placemate, I mean, we don't know that they'll exist in 2 years for that matter also, right? So I'm just, there are a lot of contingencies and I don't know what happens to the data.
We certainly hope that they do.
I agree.
We will clarify the data.
I just want to ensure that we own the data or have equal access to somehow managing that in whatever contract we're writing. Just contract lawyer hat on, sorry. Those are all of my questions. I do have a couple of fairly major points for deliberation, so I will leave it to that. Anybody else have any questions on this one at this point?
Can I jump in and ask another
Please.
question?
Yeah.
And I apologize, Isaac, too, for not asking this in advance. I guess, do we have a sense? So this program would start in July, and we would evaluate in January if we want to allow lease to locals. Do we have any sense of how many current people or current 1-year agreements would expire between July and January that are in the lease to locals program now?
I could get you that data, but off the top of my head, I don't know. I can tell you that I spoke to 3 lease to locals property owners who expressed interest in participating in this program if they were eligible to do so.
Yeah, that was actually one of, it was a question I had and I was trying to figure out how to articulate that. So thank you. And I guess the question maybe to staff is nothing prohibits us from changing either that 6-month stipulation or simply just putting a different budget amount on it of some sort if we wanted to eliminate it in order to test those waters, et cetera, right? Nothing really, we're still sort of crafting the specifics of this program at this point.
That's correct. Tonight's your night to give us that direction. I think that was one point that you actually debated a fair amount during the last conversation that you had about this, but we can pivot at this point if you've had time to noodle on it and want to try something different. This is your opportunity to do that.
And I remember what my last question was, and this is for staff. Staff, I know I've had some conversations with different staff about wanting to let a program run for a year without having to come back to council. And I'm just, I guess what I'm asking is staff presenting this 6-month because that's what we told you to do? But if you had your preference, would it be different? Hillary, you look like you're poised to take that one.
I think we were trying to respond to the council feedback that we heard that there was an interest in potentially opening it to lease to locals participants after 6 months. An alternative could be to do a 1-year check-in and consider, this is a 2-year pilot, so considering opening it to lease to locals participants for year 2 would be an alternative to consider.
Yeah, and maybe it's important to distinguish between we were trying to put together a program that we would not be coming back to you in 3 or 4 months or 8 months and saying, let's change the reimbursement rates, let's change the name because it's getting confused with this or that, to have a little bit more of a solid framework around that. I don't see opening this up to current lease to locals members in 6 months being a pivot. I see that being part of your pilot for the 1 or 2 years.
And do we have a dollar amount that we were considering as the separate buckets? I didn't actually believe I saw that in there.
We did not, because we we're not opening it from the beginning to lease to locals participants, and our thought was that we wanted to see if we come back in 6 months, we'll have a better idea of how much we have spent and how much the interest is, which will potentially help us decide on the buckets. I don't think you gave us direction last time. I think 70-30, 60-40, there was not a consensus on that. And it was the idea that if it came back that we'd make the decision on the buckets at that point when or if it is open to previous participants.
And the entire bucket for 1 year is anticipated to be $140,000 just in assistance. That is separate from the $65,000 contract. We're approving a $65,000 contract and then a $140,000 total bucket for the program of incentives.
That's correct.
Okay. Of course you may. Yes.
I wanted to make sure I understand, were the rental caps that we established under this in part intended to track what our rental caps are under lease to locals? I realize we're switching from rental rate per unit to rental rate to bedroom, but from the landlord's eyes, are we trying to establish a rent cap that's comparable?
The rent cap for lease to locals at the flat at $3,500 was, we have initially, I don't think even had a rent cap set for lease to locals when it was a pilot, and $3,500 was picked based on data from rentals that under or over $3,500 was just having a hard time finding qualified tenants, and so just set that $3,500. These rent caps by number of bedrooms was specifically designed to be below market rate, to be more affordable at each of the different sizes, because we do have so much interest in the smaller 1 and 2 bedroom units versus the 3 bedroom units that tend to be more available.
Are you able to tell me if a landlord looking at having a 1 or 2 bedroom unit would see the long-term program, the rental rooted rents, would he be looking at the incentive and the rental cap as resulting in a rental rate for him comparable to what the cap is under lease to locals? Is his income going to be the same?
It will very much depend on what they were charging before. It will likely be the same if they're not reducing, if they don't have to reduce their rent very much, then it will be with the new cap and the incentive, they will likely not lose much money. If they were charging, on the higher end of median or the higher end amount allowed by lease to locals, then they might be losing money. So there'll likely be people making decisions based on what they were charging before.
Okay, so it's hard to tell whether a landlord would view the long-term project as providing less or more income.
Yeah, it would definitely vary. Just there is such a wide spread, and we're getting more and more data on our market rate rents here, but it's a pretty unknown what those are.
And then in the first table in the answers to council questions, you were comparing the rental cap with what Facebook and Zillow and others were charging, but you didn't include the incentive amount with the rental rate that would be our cap. You understand?
Yeah, I did not include that in the chart. I can make a new chart that has that in there. We also don't necessarily want to always include the incentive when we're talking about the rental being allowed to charge. We can, obviously do that math if people want that, but some property owners are actually using that incentive to give a rent break to their tenants, and so we don't necessarily want people to always think of their rent cap plus the incentive as like what they're going to make on the property, because there's people that we have property owners that use the incentive to give an even further break to their tenants.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm going to follow up on that because so probably no surprise, I was the one who asked that question. And my point being, and I appreciate the response you gave us very much. My question, I guess, first to staff and then during deliberation, I'm going to ask the four of you the exact same question, which is, in order to prevent, or does staff believe, regardless of what market rent is, I'm not I don't know if what we're trying to do is actually match market rent. I don't know if what our goal, and I guess I'm asking for staff's interpretation, is our goal to match market rate rent and be able to show that property owners will be whole, or is our goal in a different way to be able to find a way to support affordable rental housing for people at different income levels in a more forceful way? And that's why I keep honing in on this maximum rental rate and 120 AMI, because I'm not convinced that somebody is not just going to immediately go to max rental rate. And so that's what I'm trying to continue to wrap my head around, is how do we continue to find opportunities for a variety of rental rates for the variety of wages we have in our community?
Yeah, so the program has multiple goals. It is to lock in units for the 3 years at a lower than market rate, and our proposed rent caps are below market rate. They're not, not affordable to every income level. They're affordable to 120 at that cap. But so it's, the incentive is not necessarily to make the property owner whole. It's does help cover that gap, but does not cover it completely from market rent in most cases. And there are not very many units out there that are at or below these capped rents. Just looking, I look at the data every month, and I'm sure there's ones going under the table, but that was part of the that's not advertised at all. But part of the Facebook data research was to see what is out there that people are doing on the more individual marketplace, and there are just not very many units out there that are under this rental cap. So we are providing, our intention with this program and with these rental caps are to provide more affordable units for a longer term. And then the incentive is to hopefully help the property owner make up at least some of the difference that they could get from market rate, and incentivize them to stay in this program for the full 3 years.
And how challenging would it be to manage potentially buckets at different maximum AMIs? For example, if we allocated $70,000 between 100 and 120 and another 70,000 for below 100.
I think that would be doable. It might increase the contract with Placemate, depending on how much work that would add. Because
Aren't we verifying income anyway, though?
Pardon?
Aren't we verifying? We're verifying income anyway as part of the process.
Of the tenants, yes.
Right. So really, is it that much more?
I think the burden would be on managing we could manage it. The burden would just be on managing
the buckets
and where the funds are going to.
Right.
Yeah.
There's certainly some complexity we'd have to work through with that.
Mm-hmm.
We did spend a lot of time thinking through what happens when one housemate moves out partway through the year and someone else moves in, and if that changes their bucket, we'd have to sort of think through how that would change the incentive amounts. But it's probably doable, but we'd need to give some thought to it.
Okay. I will stop with my questions for now, because they're probably more council-related questions at this point. Thank you very much. Any other council questions? Seeing none, opening public comment. Woo! Just rushing the podium there. Do you have any public comment? You are a member of the public. Okay. Thank you, Isaac. Closing public comment, and we will bring it back to council for deliberation. And I want to hear from all of you. I'm only going to slightly take the microphone first, because it would be stupid to go last and then throw a bunch of curveballs at you all. And I don't know if anybody else has any changes to the program that they would like to see, but I think you all sort of at least got a flavor of some of mine. And I do want to mention that, in my opinion, market rate rents are high. And that's why our renters, specifically these people that we're trying to serve, have such a high
burden of housing costs as it relates to their income. So I appreciate that 120% is already lower, but I also want to appreciate that a predominant number of members of our community definitely don't earn 120% of AMI, and I believe are significantly lower than that in a lot of service-related jobs, and specifically people who are renting are below that. So my question to you all really is 120 too high? And do we want to see how 100 sits in the market? And I'm open to increasing the incentive as staff presented in order to basically make it palatable to the property owner. I'm not opposed to that idea. I guess my philosophical question to you all is, who are we trying to serve with this? Because in the way that I think it's constructed, we're still kind of serving the higher end renter at a higher income level, right? Versus potentially people who really need the assistance, because somebody at the delta of $280 to me, right, between market rate and 120 AMI, that's actually a pretty insignificant number to me. But as you go down, right, if you were down at 100% of AMI and you're starting to really increase that delta, we're serving a different contingency who has a higher housing burden on their income level. So that's why I asked this question predominantly, right? And if we went to a lower AMI level for the first year, I would be in favor of opening it to lease to locals from day one, because we'd see a significant rent decrease even more. If somebody in lease to locals wanted to continue into this program straight away, most likely they're going to see the renter will see a much more significant actual rent decrease, and that opens up more of their income to support other things. So those are kind of where I'm going. Like, and I really appreciate, I had the opportunity, these guys met outside my store one day. It was awesome to see them work. It was just super random that I ran into them, and I think they've put a ton of thought into this. But I just want to throw that out there, and I'd be willing to let it go for a year at that lower income level, and then come back in a year or even 8 months. We can split the difference with staff to see sort of where we're at with this program. Or we could just tell staff, like, hey, if it's not working, like, come back in 6 months, and that's just what they do, because we can do that also. But I wanted to throw that out there while you guys deliberate, because I want to make sure that we're serving the right population here versus hitting that market rate, which 120 is still okay with, but just a little bit lower, versus 100 that's significantly lower. And should our scarce resources be really trying to affect people at lower income levels or not, I guess, is my philosophical question for you all. So with that, sure.
Yeah.
If you're ready to go, Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Yeah. Well, I've had the same concerns, and the reason right now, not having heard from the other council members, the reason I'm comfortable with going with staff's recommendation is twofold. One, back when we had a long discussion on this in January, Lynn was able to confirm that all of these different categories of housing, room, studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom on up, provide one way or the other an affordable housing for as low as 50% AMI. So I felt like we were at least creating, at least theoretically, the program was designed that to provide housing for the lowest AMI levels. And then on the 6.3, the lease to locals data showed that as the people who are using the program and the landlords are really at the lower end, the end I'm most interested in, along with you. They said the average income of the adults participating in the in the program is 69% AMI. I don't know how that is, but that's what they said. The average rent per bedroom is $1,090. The average median rent is $2,800 per unit. You talked about trying to capture the lower AMI. They said 51 units or 31% of the lease to local rentals are in the 80 to 120% range. And then, 31% or less than 80% AMI, and 54% are 80 to 120. And they didn't give us just 80 to 100, so I don't know what that is. But the way the program, lease to locals, is being implemented, for whatever reason, it's attracting the lower range of the AMI. So between what's happening with lease to locals and what this program, the Rooted Renters, provides, I'm comfortable going up to 120%.
And I would just jump in. I don't know if I think what I want to point out, I think what you're saying and what that data is showing is sort of supporting what I was saying, which is if we go to 120 on this program, what's to prevent a landlord from immediately raising that rent rate? So that's exactly what I'm saying, right? So that's why I want to cap it at 100, is to continue serving those people at 80% AMI, which is 54% of that workforce, right? Because I think what's going to happen is those people in that program and others in the market are going to immediately go to 120. I don't think anybody who participates in this program is going to go for less than what the maximum AMI is. That's my biggest concern. That's like my literally only concern.
Okay.
And I don't know how to reconcile that. And I think you're exactly telling, that's why I was gravitating towards maxing it at 100%.
Okay.
Because if you look, the median rent charged per bedroom per month is $1,053, right? So if then in the slide on our screen right now, all of a sudden they could go to a one bedroom at 1,520.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Because
totally.
Because lease to locals, the rent cap is $3,500. So currently a one bedroom unit could charge $3,500.
Yes.
This data is showing they're not doing that. And to Vice Mayor Zabriskie's point, that folks, are meeting the needs of some of the lower income residents. So I would see it as contradictory to your thought in that we have the rent cap really high, but yet people are still keeping it lower and making it available and affordable to lower income residents. So it kind of almost makes me want to stick with staff's recommendation of 120, see how the market, if we have similar results with lease to locals and people are kind of all over the map a little bit more.
Yeah, I'm going to support the program no matter what. I'm really just debating whether or not we should start lower, because it's always easier to increase things than it is to decrease things. Yeah,
Yeah,
go
the
ahead.
lease to locals hasn't maxed out yet. We
Right.
still have funding. The shortage is still with the landlords, the units being offered.
Right.
So I just want to get more units into the system. I
Yeah.
want rooted renters to track that as best it
Yeah.
can, because lease to locals is working.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember Henderson.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I have similar thoughts. I am comfortable keeping it at 120%. And I'll just say that, I think you both have sort of identified some of the data that we already have in lease to locals that does support that. And I think that's also, why we are going to pilot this, right? Because we can hypothesize all day long up here until we actually roll the program out and start evaluating some of the results. We won't know. So I support keeping it at 120%. The other item that I would love to have a conversation about, and I know we had an extensive one on this back in January, but just the sort of 6-month gap, if you will, as Mayor Pallavi mentioned, we did get a very extensive, I think very well-written public comment on that. And it was also making me think a bit, if we're if the program participant limit is 150% in lease to locals, and we do allow prior lease to locals participants to roll right into rooted renters, they're then going to be capped at 120% AMI, right? So we're actually going to get, no, yes, maybe?
Participant cap is still 150. The rent is lower. Participant cap. Yep. Just want to make that clear.
Thank you. Yes. Okay. No, that's a good clarification. I appreciate that. Anyways, I guess I'll just pause and say I'd love to talk about that.
So would you support like what I was suggesting, a mixed bucket? Basically say, hey, let's put 50 grand into allowing lease to locals to continue, basically, and just having a max amount just to see what happens. Because we don't know what the uptick's going to be, so basically don't put in a 6-month gap, and is that what you're suggesting?
That's kind of where I'm going to,
Yep,
and I know we
that's fine.
we went through this every which way you possibly could back in January, but let's see, because I sort of feel like, again, we can make assumptions of, oh, there might be interest, there might not be. If they're not eligible, we're not necessarily going to hear from everyone who's interested. Like, I want to know, and I want to actually see how many people apply so we can make decisions based on that.
So you want to delete the 6-month gap and just allow it to roll back over, or did you want to put any restrictions on it? What did you have a suggestion?
I think I would. I think I am comfortable completely removing the 6-month gap. Separate funding buckets still, as we've talked about back in January. I think that still makes sense. And once those funds are exhausted, then we'll have some good insight into how quick that uptake is or not. I would love to hear, from whoever wants to speak to this, though. I don't know what the process would look like if someone wants to go from lease to locals to rooted rentals. I don't necessarily think is it an automatic enrollment? Are there, I don't think that would work. I think there's going to be some additional work that probably has to happen, but I'll let you speak to that.
So I think there's some details we need to work through. As written, in the program guidelines, tenants will be qualified at the beginning of the program. So in rooted renters, and that's how it works in lease to locals as well. So if a tenant group that has been living in a lease to locals house is going to continue living in a rooted renters house, I think we would need to we'd requalify them. To ensure that they.
But they wouldn't get requalified over the 3-year term.
That's correct. Once
they're qualified once, if they do better, that's great. That's what we want.
Right. And if they qualify and continue to live in the house for another 3 years, I mean, that meets the goals of the program as well. It provides 3 years of funding, 3 years of housing.
And really, by putting in a budget amount for this year one anyway, we're really, in year one, we're only paying out 30%. So we're not we're not paying out on a 3-bedroom $24,000 in year one, for example, on a lease to locals house necessarily. We would have some time to regroup the budget and figure out what our actual 3-year liability is going to be. Each year, we're going to have to actually readjust the budget based on what our long-term liability is for the program regardless.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And then, so I know others will want to weigh in on the 6-month gap or not. Would love to hear feedback on that. I think the only other thing that I wanted to mention in terms of deliberation is just, Mayor Pallavi, you brought this up. Like, do we need to see this in 6 months? Could it come back in 12 months? I do sometimes feel like we almost try to adjust our programs too fast. Like we don't give them enough time to be in market. And so if staff agrees, like if you think this makes sense, and again, I'm going to rely on some of staff's recommendation on this, I feel like with what I know right now, I would be comfortable, just give us a presentation in 6 months, like a quick 10-minute thing, and let it come back for a discussion in 12 months. Like let's actually give it a full year to pilot. But again, staff might not think that makes sense, and so you're welcome to weigh in. I just want it to have enough time in market that we actually have enough time to gather the type of data we need to make informed decisions.
I would also throw out one more variable on the percent rent increase. 7% is just a lot, in my opinion. I would also propose 5%. Still allows for appreciation, allows for cost of living increases. 7 is wonderful, and the fair market would allow 10, but this isn't the fair market anyway. So I would just propose we lower that to 5.
personally.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you gave a very detailed explanation for how you got to 7. So I think the explanation made a lot of sense. I'm comfortable with it. If others feel strongly that it should be a different number, then I'm also happy to hear that. And I also wanted to say just congratulations on your presentation. You did an amazing job. I hope you're really proud of it. Like really great data and detail. So I should have said that right up front.
Okay, let's hear from
Councilmember, can I ask
this
one
side.
clarifying question just in case your colleagues have a different thought? For a 6-month presentation, would it be okay to incorporate that into the work plan update and then highlight it in the presentation, or do you want something separate?
I think that would be fabulously efficient.
Okay.
Yeah, whatever. I think we're good with that. Did you have a chance to talk yet?
I talked about the
Okay,
120.
talk again.
But I'll talk again. I agree with Councilmember Henderson and Mayor Pallavi removing the 6-month lease. I think the goal of this program is to provide more long-term rental opportunities and keep people in units. And so if we have someone in a unit, that's why I asked how many people do you think would be, ending their term between July and January. Would the landlord try to do a 6-month lease so they'd be eligible in January, and then there's uncertainty and worry from the residents? So I think it makes sense to maintain separate buckets of funding, and then allow folks to move into rooted renters directly after lease to locals. And then fully comfortable with it being part of the work plan presentation. I think staff, again, does an incredible job when you notice deficiencies or issues. And I think Placemate too, hey, if we tweak these things, and I think if that happens and you feel like it's worth bringing it back, then they will. But otherwise, yeah, let's give them more time to get work done and not have to worry about putting beautiful PowerPoints together.
Are you guys comfortable, since both of you have already spoken, on 50,000 specifically allocated to or up to 50,000 allocated to the lease to locals in year 1, and 90, I guess, would be going or in the other bucket, or really it's one big bucket, but we're putting a maximum amount of 50,000 in payouts for year 1 on lease to locals? That's really what we're doing, I think. Yeah. We're putting a maximum amount.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of a shot in the dark, honestly. Like,
And
we
I
don't know
agree
if it
with
should
you.
be 40
I'm
or
just
50.
guessing.
So
I'm trying to balance the fact that we identified in our previous discussions that we wanted to give more opportunity to people who have not been able to receive some type of subsidy yet. So to me, yes, it's a completely made up number, but I'm trying to at least weigh what we talked about last time and at least give staff some direction.
Like a 2-to-1 funding bucket or something. Sure.
Exactly, 50 to 9, yeah.
Yeah, I think the guidelines are here. We've got the idea. We'll divide it out 50, 90, something close to that. You'll see that in the budget that you get in June. It's too late to get that into the budget. You'll see at the next meeting. And then just if we're going to be doing work plan updates, if we see that we're running close to the max amount in lease to locals, but not getting a lot in the new bucket, that's the time that you can say, come back, we want to adjust that. So you have opportunities.
Yeah. Sorry.
I would just say, I don't feel strongly, 5 or 7%, again, similarity to Councilmember Henderson. So if others feel strongly one way or the other.
Trying to readjust the program and edit it, since you all don't seem to want to. So Councilmember Klostad has been waiting incredibly patiently. So take it. Let's hear from you.
I want to thank my fellow council members for completing this deliberation for me. I feel very comfortable with, basically your assessment and where you landed and staff's ability to monitor the program and bring it back at an appropriate time, should it be necessary. I too, the focus here is we want to maximize housing opportunities in our community, and providing that seamless transition from lease to locals into this program, I think is in alignment with that goal. I also think that keeping it at the 120 is, I think they've done good research and documentation and why we would land there. I'm completely happy with that, because there are still going to be people that we're going to we're going to include that we might exclude if we limited to it 100%. And I understand the proposal. The 7% seems high to me, but there again, staff it's based on research and data, and I like that. Changing it would be us being a bit arbitrary, so I'm uncomfortable with that. But I'm willing to hear an argument and a logic that could be applied to change that. Of course, this just being clear, they could increase it by a maximum of 7%. They may not, correct? Right. So that's where I stand with all the items that we've deliberated. Did I miss anything?
No, you're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So one thing is in the staff report on the lease to locals, in the retention data, they say that 68% of the 120 properties that completed the program were rented long-term for a second year. So we should be aware of that. I think there were rent increases with a lot of those, and the tenants stayed, or it was new tenants. They continue to rent long-term. So there's certain things we don't know.
That's true. That data doesn't specify that it was the original
so
tenants.
I'm fine with eliminating the 6 months, despite that high rate of long-term rental, and I would stick with the 7%. But I could go to, did I say 7? I could go.
It sounds like we have consensus to basically proceed with the program as presented with the deletion of the 6-month waiting period and the addition of some sort of 2-for-1 bucket that limits the amount of lease to local carryover subsidies. And those were the only changes I heard consensus on.
Well, I think the other change is that we're not requiring them to bring this back to us in 6 months.
The only reason they were going to was for the 6-month thing. So if we delete that, we are just putting this, like all of our other programs, in my opinion, into staff's hands to execute on. And should they need budget amendments and or consent items or minor contractual changes to make sure that we own the data and Placemate doesn't take it away after a year or whatever the case may be, staff is enabled to do that as they see fit. Pretty much the leeway we've given them with just about every program, I believe. So is everybody good with the way this is going to roll out? And it's pretty exciting. So congratulations. Good job. Do you need a motion or was this direction? What are we doing here? We are approving the draft guidelines as amended, but we do need to approve a $65,000 contract. So Councilmember Romack, will you provide us with a motion?
Yeah, love to make a motion to approve the Rooted Renters Pilot Program draft guidelines as amended and approve a $65,000 contract with Placemate to provide administrative and marketing support services for this awesome program.
And I will second.
Oh, and Zabriskie got that second in, so we'll give that one to Vice Mayor Zabriskie. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you guys so much for bringing this to us, and we'll just pilot another program out there. So take it away, Isaac, and let us know how we do. All right, one more. The 7.4, which is our Dark Skies Spring Awareness Campaign and Lighting Rebate Program amendments. Jen gets this one. This is in your department, huh, Jen? This is all you?
Wow. I sometimes phone in some friends and seek some lifelines depending on my availability. But yes, we are a team effort here for sure. While I'm opening this up, we really just have a couple amendments that we are asking you to consider. So I'm going to briefly go over what the program currently is, give you a little bit of feedback from what we've heard so far, and then just scenarios that came up that we didn't really anticipate when we were developing this program. And that's, pretty typical. We come back with you to you fairly often with some recommended adjustments. So As you know, you just talked about this about 2 months ago, early March. This is a partnership with Sierra Business Council through the Climate Transformation Alliance, a dark skies compliant lighting rebate program for exterior lighting, residential and commercial. And it's really a bigger part of our bigger overall awareness campaign for dark skies. You allocated $50,000 towards rebates, and then we have a contract with SBC to implement and administer that program. It's first come, first serve, launched in April, and we agreed upon a closure date in December in which we would come back and report out results unless we run out of budget before then, and then we would be back to you sooner. In March, the program guidelines or parameters that you established was a $75 fixture max rebate for up to 8 fixtures, and that's per building. So a single family residential home, that would be a $600 max, or a multifamily home per unit would have the opportunity to install 8 new fixtures for $75 max reimbursement per fixture. And we defined multifamily as 5 units or more. And we were a little bit making sausage while we were doing this and doing some adjustments. So one of the recommendations you'll see later on is because of that, when you think of 5 multifamily homes at $600 per unit, you exceed the max amount for commercial. It would be a $3,000 reimbursement amount. So we were trying to create some parity that we don't offer more for one group versus the other. Eligibility criteria, you have to be a resident or business owner within the town in Truckee, to be Energy Star certified, dark sky compliant, and meet our town lighting ordinance, and again for exterior use. And we need a needed receipt of purchase or proof of installation. Okay, that's a duplicate. And again, we're trying to reduce emissions, save energy, and promote dark skies. So multiple goals with this program, all of which SBC is tracking. So you'll have those metrics when we come back to you. Since April, so just about 1 month, we've had 6 applications approved and processed, totaling almost $1,750 in rebates issued. We've had 8 inquiries, 2 of which have resulted in one of those 6 approved applications, and we have 1 application in process. And I should say this was as of middle of last week, so these numbers might be slightly different right now. All of our applications have been for residential use, so we're not getting commercial interest yet. And from what SBC team is hearing from the customers is they're really, pleased with the program. It seems to be easy, pretty efficient, and not requiring, all that much effort for the reimbursement amount. So that was good to hear. So tonight, we're asking you to approve a few modifications. The purchase of lights prior to the program, but installed after launch. That's been a question that's been asked a couple times from people submitting inquiries. We felt that that was reasonable if they were installing them after launch. The goal, again, is to promote dark sky compliant lighting. So we thought that was okay and wanted to get your support for that. Approve reimbursements for new construction and new additions. We see that as just another layer of promoting dark sky compliant lighting. So felt that met the goals of the program. And then expand beyond Energy Star approved lighting to include LED energy efficient lighting. Again, just to continue to promote dark sky compliant lighting within our community. And then, as I was alluding to earlier, we asked that we redefine large multifamily to 5 units or more to create parity with our single-family homes and small multifamily units. And the chart here really explains why, and that is so our multifamily 5 units or more in commercial buildings max out at $2,500 in reimbursement, and our single family and multifamily 4 units are similar to that at $2,400 in reimbursement. Also wanted to take this as an opportunity to give you a little bit of update. Certainly gaining some popularity countywide. Our Western County partners, Nevada City, Grass Valley, and Nevada County, have launched their own photo competition and awareness campaign that's being run through Nevada County Arts Alliance. They got a little bit later start to launching their photo competition, but they're running theirs through June 17th. So we've extended ours to kind of align with that, with the hopes being able to announce photo competition winners and doing some social media together on when that wraps up. And we have, I checked this morning or this afternoon again, we now have 54 entries on Sierra Sun. There was, the amazing Northern Lights show this past weekend, so we've got some beautiful pictures that have been uploaded there. We have our first youth photo that's been uploaded, a number of professional and amateur photos. So I think the word is definitely out there. It's great to see some of these photos. I was going to pull that up just so anybody at home could see how to access those, how to submit, how to see what was already submitted. And just as a reminder, we do have some pretty interesting and fun prizes for the competition. Grand prize in all 3 categories is a $500 sustainable Truckee gift card. We have pictures that will be printed on metallic canvases and then doing a display out at the rec center in July and August of the winning photography. Second place is a $250 sustainable Truckee gift card for amateur and for professional. And then for third place in professional, a $100 sustainable Truckee gift card. And then in our youth category, for our 2nd through 5th place prize winners, we're going to be hosting a dark skies photography workshop and hike for them so they can continue to learn more about their photography and their interest in photography and the night sky. So some fun prizes for people, and we're really happy to see the level of participation. So I'm going to escape out of here. I can come back if you'd like, but I do want to just show some of the web pages so that everybody at home knows how to access them. This is Nevada County Arts, which the Western County partners are utilizing as their platform for the photo competition. So that's nevadacountyarts.org/dark skies. They have a bunch of information on here on how to register, how to enter your photos, education, awareness. We were able to share our collateral that we developed in the fall. So they've put a little bit of their own brand on that, but they've used our videos and are using the same collateral. So the whole county has a very similar feel into the program that's operating. And then for the town's photography competition, it's through the Sierra Sun. If you scroll down to the bottom, you see Don't Be Afraid of the Dark photo contest, and you just click on that. The rules are on the front page as well as the entry form. And then if you're interested in seeing the submissions, just go to View Gallery. You can sort by category here. You can just scroll through and see all the amazing photography that's been submitted so far for this program. And then to circle back to why we are here tonight, and you can see the amazing dark skies or Northern Lights photography. Why we're here tonight is about lighting rebate. So if you go to the town's website under Hot Topics, join the Dark Skies movement. This is probably the easiest way to get there. We have all of our materials again, but on this left-hand banner, if you click on that, it will take you to the CTA website. And here's all the information on our lighting rebate program, eligibility benefits, what you need to apply, and then how to apply. And again, hearing that this process is pretty simple for the user. So open to any feedback if people have a different experience, but so far I think it's working pretty well. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Any council questions? None on this end. None on this end. Opening public comment. Woo! Closing public comment. Councilmember Henderson, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for all your work doing this. I know we've seen it a few times recently, and I really appreciate it. And was just having some conversations over the weekend about dark skies across the county, and I love seeing that we as a town have been able to initiate a county-wide thing like this. I think it's really, really impressive. So a couple of comments. So first, in terms of the updates, the purchase of lights prior to the program launch in April, but installed after program launch, I do not agree with this one, and the reason is twofold. The first is that it's going to be impossible in implementation to actually approve the date of installation, right? People could take a picture at any point. But I think the bigger issue is that, you know, our goal is to promote dark skies and also to promote behavior change as a result of our program, right? We want people to make this change who, in the absence of a rebate, like might not be able to do that. And so, you know, people who have already purchased equipment, you know, just like in energy efficiency, those would be free riders. Like they do it with or without the rebate. I want us reaching people who couldn't do it without the rebate. So I don't agree with this first one at all, quite frankly. I think it's fine if we want to add new construction and new additions. Of course, we have our lighting code, which is fairly specific, but we want the dark sky specificity. So I think that makes sense. And then I also agree with expanding to not to exceed 3,000 Kelvin. That aligns with the dark sky international requirements. So that one makes a ton of sense to me. So the only one that I really don't agree with is the first.
It was also brought up in the council questions and comments about having some motion sensors because, at least in my opinion, it's wonderful if you have dark sky lights, but if you also leave them on all night, it sort of defeats the purpose of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we want to provide, I think staff said there's opportunity to like either add that, or what was staff's comment on that one?
Yeah, I think the SBC team felt like they could go do some research and come back with that. Alternatively, I think you could say you're interested in providing either saying it has to be on a motion sensor or an extra, some incremental amount for motion detectors. And we can just implement. It depends on how much research you want to support that.
Yeah, I mean, that one, I completely agree with you 100% when they're on and, you know, it's dark sky compliant, but it's on at 11, 12, 2 in the morning. It doesn't make any sense. Motion sensors are not totally infallible, right? If someone has it automated and programmed a certain way and the power goes out, it can mess up the programming. So it's not a perfect solution. I think it's a good idea. I don't know at this point if we should say it should be a requirement. I don't know that I feel that strongly, but if you guys do, then I'm happy to, you know, be open on that one.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Oh, the motion sensors I'm familiar with are the security lights that pop on when I walk down the street. So I'm conflicted.
While the program was going
I agree with Councilmember Henderson.
Mike's not on, sorry. Now it is. There you go.
So I actually think the motion sensors are really imperative. I wouldn't go to the point of saying that an applicant's not eligible unless they include motion sensors. I would actually take a different tact and I would say anybody's allowed to apply, including somebody who purchased them earlier and is going to install them. I mean, it's not going to be that many and I'm fine. The reason why, Council Member Henderson, I am not bothered by the first one is because of the comment that we received from the applicant that said he's showing off his lights to his neighbors. The best recommendation, the best way to advance and duplicate and expand this program is going to be from those people, those neighbors showing it off to neighbors and friends. And so get as many of them out there, have it be a positive experience, get more people in the program. That would be my motivation there. And I would actually love to see a separate and additional reimbursement for a motion sensor to incentivize that, because we want that, but we don't want to deter people from doing this program by requiring it. That would be
So maybe like add $10 or $5 or $5 per fixture.
Have SBC review that and make a recommendation and, you know, whatever. Like, we're good. Just incentivize that behavior and the behavior of making this process easy so that people are proud of it and want to show it off to their neighbors.
And I think the longer the process goes, the fewer, to Councilmember Henderson's comment, you're right, like, we're probably only going to see a few people who are still going to apply who purchased their lights prior
Yeah.
to the purchase.
That's
Like,
gonna be
I
a
can't imagine. Yeah, it's going to be
diminishing number.
precisely. So,
Yeah.
like, I
And
would agree with you is the benefit, like, hey, this was an awesome program and I got reimbursed, like, you should do it too,
Yeah.
versus pissing the
And they
one or
even
two people
reimbursed
off.
me even though I bought them before the program started. It's like, wow, this is so great. Like, let's do that.
Can I just add something on here,
course.
just as part of the discussion? So I couldn't agree with you more. Social norming, when people talk about things, right, and it becomes part of dialogue with neighbors or friends, is a really, really important behavioral strategy in energy sort of at large. I think the other piece of this is you won't find other rebates in the energy space that are like, oh, it's fine if you purchased it before. So it doesn't align with best practices, which I think is also problematic. I don't think there's going to be a lot of those people, but I think that we're going to continue to see uptake, especially now that it's a county-wide initiative. And so I'm not worried that we're not going to have enough people to exhaust the program funds if we do limit it. I just wanted to say that.
I do want to clarify that the county partners haven't picked up on the lighting rebate piece yet. They're only doing photo competition. We did build this in part of going through SBC and CTA was so that the framework was there, that if any partner of CTA, which the county is one, wants to use that, it's good to go if they can fund it.
Appreciate the dialogue on this one. And I agree with Councilmember Klovstad that I think in the end we want people to change out their lights, get the rebates. So I definitely hear you, Councilmember Henderson, but I'm okay with the first one. And then also I like the idea of an additional incentive for a motion sensor, because that was going to be, aren't motion sensors more expensive typically? And then are we disincentivizing if we're forcing that? So I support that. However, I know we don't want to make sausage up here, but it seems like, is it worth asking SBC to research an amount and then have to come back to us again? Can we just say?
We just authorize them to do an appropriate reimbursement.
Perfect. I like that. Yes. For motion sensors.
What were you going to say, Jen?
If you're wanting to give us some discretion in determining what that reimbursement amount is, it might be helpful to say up to, I'm willing to go up to $20 or $10 or whatever it is, and we'll do a little bit of research to see what the cost is and what makes sense within that maximum amount.
And the reason why I don't want to put a very specific cap, or at least give a little bit of license there, is that sometimes each light has its own built-in sensor. Sometimes you're putting up a bunch of lights and they're connected to a single motion sensor. Obviously, one motion sensor versus 6 is going to be less expensive. So there's a big range there. I don't want to limit it too much.
Up to $20? I mean, it seems like we should give
We
it
have
up
to put
to
it,
amount.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
20 is fine.
Okay. Per
motion sensor. Per motion sensor, $20. Okay. So we'll add that if we need to into the language. Okay. I think everybody except for Councilmember Zabriskie had a chance to chime in. I will just chime in again really quickly with my beating drum of broken records, which is, this is great. It's outside the building department guidelines. Okay, so if you are applying for a permit for an addition, you are not receiving this information.
Although,
Are we getting somewhere?
I believe we have fixed that.
Oh,
for
yay.
This one.
We're fixing that.
The building team now has this, and we're working it into.
So
Yes.
great to hear that I don't have to beat this drum yet again. Thank you so much. Okay. You're just shaking your shoulders. So I think we're looking for a motion from this end.
Can I ask one more clarifying question?
Yes.
Are we okay with redefining large multifamily as 5 units?
Yes, I didn't think we heard any opposition to that.
Okay.
I
think we have a few disagreements, but that's why I think the consensus is maybe on this end. So we are going to look for a motion on this end to proceed.
I have the recommendations back up. Okay, so I move that we approve the program updates, which include purchase of lights prior to program launch in April, but installed after program launch, including new construction and new additions would be eligible for the program, and expand beyond Energy Star approved to allow all LED energy efficient lights that do not exceed 3,000 Kelvin.
And the addition of the motion sensor.
And the addition of up to $20 per motion sensor to be allowed on top of the existing program.
Thank you. I didn't put this on the slide, but we also need the budget adjustment that's in the staff report.
65,000, I believe, right, was the budget?
The adjusted budget as presented.
Yes.
Adjusted, and approve the adjusted budget as presented.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
And I think we're going to do a roll call out of all of our agenda items tonight. We're going to get a roll call on this one. So go figure, everybody.
Councilmember Henderson?
I strongly disagree with the first point, but I want to see this program lifted, so I will say yes.
Vice Mayor Zabriskie?
Yes.
Mayor Pallavi?
Yes.
Councilmember Klostad?
Yes.
And Councilmember Romack?
Yes.
Thank you.
Look at that. Excellent work, everybody. Thank you very much. With that, we will move into council member reports. And you want to hit us off? Councilmember Henderson, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I attended the final Tech Teens event and gave out the certificates of accomplishment to every student who participated. I just want to thank everyone at Town Hall. A lot of folks worked really, really hard on this. The Chamber of Commerce worked really hard on this, and several partners did as well. So the first cohort of students, they learned about tech here at Town Hall. Chief, I think they got to see some of the fun things in your division. They went to the hospital district and got to see a robot do like a surgery on a fake knee. They went to really neat, they went to the public utility district and got to learn about advanced metering infrastructure and how tech and data is used in that capacity. They went to the airport district and got to go up into the control tower. So just some really amazing, amazing experiences. And it sounds like it was an incredibly successful program. All of the parents were there. I mean, it was truly a celebration. So that was a lot of fun. I also attended the historic Chinatowns designation. That was just last week. That was a wonderful event. And I didn't know this, the reason they picked the day for the designation specifically is it was the 155th anniversary of the Transcontinental Railroad completion, which just was incredible. The plaque looks amazing. It's right in front of the old jailhouse, so I definitely encourage folks to go there. This isn't on the plaque, but I did learn that the piece of granite that the plaque is on, some of the folks in engineering, I think, helped to source that. Dan, is that correct? Maybe. Yeah. And you can actually see some of the plug holes in it. So they think it was from up on the summit, and you can see the plug holes from like where they would insert dynamite in the granite that the plaque is attached to. And right below the plaque, there is a Chinese poppy that was donated by the local nursery. So again, that's stuff that's not on the plaque, but I thought was pretty amazing and just incredible to honor everyone who came before us. We talk a lot about preserving our past and preparing for the future. So this was really incredible. And then last week, I spent 6 days working on Dancing with the Sierra Stars, along with Chief Renfro, who's cringing, smiling, all of the above. Incredible event to support an amazing organization in town, Inner Rhythms. So they had our chief, they had the fire chief, and several others. And we got to have a great community event and raise a lot of money for inclusive dance, dance for senior citizens. They're launching a new Dance for Parkinson's program. So it was pretty amazing. So I just wanted to say congratulations to Inner Rhythms and everyone who worked to put that on. And that took up a lot of my time. So that was pretty much it.
Yeah, and I think we did skip council reports last meeting, so if anybody wants to go back really, really far, don't worry about it. You're good. Yeah, but just for the record.
I attended the SWEP event at Truckee right before the last council meeting. That one comes to mind. That was really cool. I got to talk about pollution in our watershed.
Nice.
So that's the one that comes to mind. There must have been others, but
It's all good.
thank you.
Yeah. Vice Mayor Zabriskie.
Attended an economic vitality meeting of the R2SC, that's the River Revitalization Steering Committee, where we selected Jason Troops, Laura Saylor, and Michael Cohen, the members of our community, to be added to the economic vitality team. Attended a homeless advisory meeting followed by a tour of housing and shelters for the unhoused in South Lake Tahoe. It's run by the Tahoe Coalition for the Homeless. Danny Renfro attended along with Lynn Baumgartner and Hillary Hobbs. The police chief for South Lake Tahoe said there's been a 60% reduction in complaints about the homeless to the police since the establishment of the shelters and housing, and then there's been a 50% reduction in hospital visits by the homeless. And then there was an inaugural meeting of an economic vitality action team that included the 3 new members. Attended the Chamber of Commerce Town Talk on the unhoused, a Firewise community meeting, another river revitalization talk. This was the Taco Talk at Donner Creek, was well attended, along with the one at the bridge over the Truckee River, and then the one at Wild Cherries. They actually were all in attendance, more than a dozen people at each, which I consider a good turnout. And then the mayor and I both participated in a hospital meeting yesterday afternoon, and then along with council members Romack and Klovstad went on a tour led by Dan Wilkins, where we walked right by Moody's, Alibi Ale, and Casa Baeza. Didn't go in. Hard to imagine. We can't believe it. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Klovstad.
Okay. The highlight for me was going to Katie Santos's Cell's 7th grade class for a drilling. They had really great questions and great experience. It's so exhilarating to be with our youth and see their interest in their queries and their questions and what lights them up. And they're very interested in a lot of the stuff that we're doing here in town, so that was really fun. I attended a webinar on unbottling the environment, and mainly that it was focusing on the amount of microplastics that are just prevalent in our environment, in our world, in our beings, in our everything that we consume. So that was very eye-opening and really fortified me on our future single-use water bottle changes and ordinance. The biomass task force was too long ago. I don't remember what we talked about on that one. Do you? Oh, it was too long ago now.
We're working through sort of the vision and mission of the biomass task force.
That's right. We
and
met in
how we'll work together.
person here. Yeah, we met in person here. That was actually really nice. And then CTA meeting, governing partners meeting, where we were really kind of convening around and finalizing our strategic plan. We're hoping to daylight that soon. We were giving feedback, critical feedback on the new website that had launched, and then developing our committee structure. And I just want to reiterate to my fellow council members that you guys are, we can have 2 people at the quarterly meetings, and anybody could participate in one of our subcommittees because they don't necessarily have to be at the quarterly meetings. So I will ask Jen to share those once they're formalized and just open up that opportunity, because I'm obviously not going to be able to participate in all the subcommittees, So I would love to have a stratification of that on our council as people are interested. And then Sierra Business Council is really full force in their Tahoe building decarbonization pilot program. They are doing a bunch of on-demand trainings for mainly for contractors and installers, but also designers. And these are basically good information for anybody that's interested in making that transition. And then they'll be doing some in-person training sessions that will start in July, most likely. And then we have some mentoring possibilities coming up to go through all of that, and just a whole host of ways to do outreach in our community and help people understand what building decarbonization is, what it is not, what are the benefits, how do you make it happen, how do you finance it, all of those things. So some really exciting stuff coming from that program, and it's just getting going right now. And those are the highlights. It's some other meetings, but those are the ones you guys should know about.
Go ahead, Councilmember Roman.
Other big highlight that hasn't been mentioned, the Truckee Follies. Some incredible.
I spent the last 3 weeks recovering from the Truckee Follies.
But a lot of fun working with a lot of you, and I know lots of folks came to that, so thank you to the community for raising a lot of money for the Truckee Downtown Merchants Association. So that was a fantastic time, but yeah, it took a few days to recover. Those were a lot of late nights in a row. I also attended the last CCC meeting. I know Mayor Pallavi was on as well. I had to pull up the agenda too, because the Forest Service presented on some of their projects, and then there was a discussion on wildfire season. Bob Womack talk. I know Chief was on as well. We hear a lot from our team, and we're in good hands here, and it was good to hear from some of our other partners of all the great work that they're doing as well. Also attended the TMA meeting 2 weeks ago, and there were presentations from both Palisades and North Star on their winter parking reservation system, and just, some of the changes that they saw in behavior. And I know there's been a lot of press releases, but I believe Palisades talked about, previous, it was just over 1 passenger per car. They were seeing on average, I think, 3.3 passengers per car, which is pretty incredible. Saw, a huge uptick in ridership on the park and ride system. Also acknowledged there are still challenges and still improvements to be made with their software system and other things, but it was interesting to hear that data. So I'm sure we could get that PowerPoint too if anyone else would be interested in seeing some of their numbers, because it was interesting. What else? I had my interview today with Baker Tilly, who we heard from earlier, operational assessment. It was great to chat, and I think the community should be excited for this process, and I really appreciate staff taking the time today as well to start the conversations. And then I was lucky enough to go on vacation and was in Moab and Zion and was geeking out on all their local government there. And at the post office, they had the planning commission meeting, but then also talking to one of our servers about the housing challenges in Moab. So I think just a reminder, as we all know, we're not alone in some of our struggles in some of our mountain tourist areas, but good to, hear what other places are doing as well, and maybe utilize some of their great ideas too. And that is it.
Are we all becoming policy tourists? Because I did that.
Generally, yes. The transportation system in Zion is also really crazy. Yeah. The highlight of mine, you all got a little taste of it, was really the town evacuation exercise. I don't think we had a chance to even talk about that since that happened, because that was like right smack in the middle of Follies week. But that was just incredible work by Bob and James on our team. I had the chance to stand with Chief Renfro for like 20 minutes, and he gave me the play-by-play. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was incredible to see everybody at work and really what that entailed.
while I didn't love it, the twist of the second fire, that was almost like somewhat laughable if it weren't reality, and somewhat scary. But I really enjoyed how you guys put all that together. And I think we should acknowledge not only our Office of Emergency Services, but Truckee Fire, Cal Fire, Cal State Parks, Nevada County Public Health, REMSA, and the Washoe County Emergency Management Team, because they were all here. They were all in the room. I've never, one of the jokes we made beforehand, like the room was like quiet. It didn't start till 9 o'clock, but you had about 50 people all in uniform, and the room was quiet at 8:50. And we were all sort of looking around like, guess they're ready to go. Like, never in Truckee is any meeting like that ready to go and silent 10 minutes, before start time. So you could tell it was a slightly different kind of meeting. But it was just absolutely eye-opening, and it was really impressive to see the work that you guys are all doing here. My other highlight, other than everything else that you guys all mentioned, was we did have a Visit Truckee Tahoe board meeting where we were able to approve and allocate our proposed fair share, or Visit Truckee's fair share of funding to TART Connect for the next 6 months starting July 1st, among a lot of other things that VTT has going on right now. But that was a really great recognition. And then also a commitment. I think what we didn't talk about with this group yet was really an interest and commitment, depending on what happens, obviously, in the fall and how we end up dealing with TART Connect. But there was a request for the town to come back for a second tranche of funding for once this first 6 months runs out, and with an addition for marketing. And I think VTT is really interested in sort of ramping up the marketing of that program to our visitor community specifically, and having an above and beyond allocation that does go to that. So just wanted to make sure that you guys heard that, and that VTT is excited to continue that program and excited to remain a part of it. Hospital, CCC, a couple other things, and seems like as the snow melts and all of our planning projects seem to be taking off, or people are reinvigorated to get their approvals done, lots and lots of requests to join planning meetings and other land use issues as they continue to arise. But way too many to manage right now. Sorry, and that's why I was late coming back to the dais at break, because I was trying to figure out what was going on. So anyway, with that, we will adjourn to closed session. We have 3 items on closed session, and we will open public comment for that right away. Thank you.